Part 57. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 576. Muwanji and I both have a personal interface. Muzian was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses and subconsciously lowered his voice. When did you find out about this? Wei Mengru said in a very calm tone. Not long ago, when you were talking to Muwanji. She lowered her head. I saw her open her personal interface, but there was only one achievement on it, but she closed it before I could see it clearly. Muzian is actually not so surprised that others also have the golden finger of system. After all, from his past understanding, he is not the only time traveler in Jizhu. Similarly, there is more than one reborn person. Since there are time travelers and reborn people, even if there are system holders, it is naturally not unacceptable. What he really cares about is whether Muwanji's personal interface is the same as his personal interface. According to what the original witch's spiritual consciousness said before, my personal interface was given to me by her personally. Muzian stared into Wei Mengru's eyes. Who gave Muwanji her personal interface? Or is her personal interface innate? The flickering candlelight illuminated Wei Mengru's cold and beautiful face with a little blush. She looked at Muzian, who was frowning and thinking, and suddenly sighed faintly. I should have told him about this after finishing the business. The young master was a little absent-minded and put his mind on Muwanji. Now she said something that made the young master care more about Muwanji, although the woman didn't seem to have any thoughts about the young master. If you change the angle. If the woman had some thoughts about the young master, could she just beckon the young master to serve her actively? The next step is up to you, Wei Mengru said softly in her heart. She didn't know much about the memories of the original witch, because the original witch still lacked the most important spiritual consciousness. The third original witch's spiritual consciousness in the depths of the southern wilderness. The next moment, Wei Mengru's cold and beautiful temperament was visibly restrained, and an indescribable charm quietly emanated from the woman's body. The white and crystal clear calves were faintly visible under the black gauze skirt, and the original witch slowly opened her silver eyes without any impurities. As if she realized that her delicate body was still pressed by Muzian, the original witch blushed, shyly turned away, and timidly said, Mu Lang, can you let me go first? This attitude, and this seemingly shy look, obviously after mixing with the spiritual consciousness of the love witch, the original witch's memory has also awakened most of the time, and her personality has changed again. If it were normal, Muzian would have to tease the original witch for a while before letting go, but at this moment he had something more important to worry about, so he quickly let go of the palm on the original witch's shoulder. She slightly adjusted the silver hair in front of her forehead, then came to the bronze mirror, slightly adjusted her hair, and carefully looked at herself in the bronze mirror. There can't be a second personal interface in this world, Mu Lang. Looking at Muzian in the bronze mirror and his eyes that were always staring at her, the original witch spoke gently in a soft and pleasant voice. Hearing an answer that was completely different from what he imagined, Muzian couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. But Sister Mengro said just now. The other one I said was also right. Muwanji was indeed looking down at her personal interface at that time, the original witch replied. This is also a question I can't figure out. Logically speaking, there should only be one personal interface in the world. Muzian also fell into deep thought after hearing this, and she is also born with a charming body like me and Zixuan. The body that can make people fascinated and fall in love with the other person at a glance must be like the body of the queen of the demon realm or the nine-tailed heavenly fox. If the queen of the demon realm is willing, she, who is now in the Yuhua realm, can make Muzian fall under her pomegranate skirt with just one glance, or even submit to her. It's just that the queen is too arrogant. Rather than using charm, she hopes to conquer Muzian with her charm. So when facing Muzian, she has restrained her charming body to the greatest extent. But Muwanji seems unable to restrain her charming body, so she uses a veil to cover her stunning appearance. But no matter what, it can be judged from this point that Mu-1-ge does have the top charming body. This is also an important reason why Musian feels strange. You know, the top natural body of charm is not a piece of cake. At least in the current Jizhu, there are only two types of physiques that are known to be able to charm all living beings in the demon world. The most important thing is that Wei Mengru said before that she saw that there seemed to be only one achievement in Mu-1-ge's personal interface at that time. If Wei Mengru is not wrong, then this matter is even more strange. It is impossible that the achievement that Mu-1-ge has is the unlocked natural body of charm, right? Then all this is too coincidental. Unable to think of the answer, Musian could only close his eyes, try to look down from a high place, and try to analyze the various information he got. Mu-1-ge is the patriarch of the Mu clan, one of the 8 major families in the ancient times. And tens of thousands of years ago, he was picked up by a woman named Mu-1-ge. Not long after, Mu-1-ge brought another girl, she named that girl Mu-ge, who is now the supreme of the Forbidden Land of Life. After that, Mu-ge grew up with him, and Mu-1-ge suspected that Mu-ge had already regarded him as his fiancé. Until one day, Mu-1-ge was about to leave the Forbidden Land of Life. Before that, the woman sealed him in the formation. So far, Mu-ge was alone guarding the Forbidden Land of Life, and then the timeline kept moving forward to this golden age. Mu-1-ge returned to the Forbidden Land of Life, unsealed it, and sent him to Tianqian City. What happened next? Maybe Mu-1-ge used the forbidden things of life to rewrite the memories of all the people in Tianqian City who knew the Mu clan, and he naturally became the eldest master of the Mu clan. So during his time as the young master of the Mu clan, was Mu-1-ge watching him quietly somewhere? If so, why did she do this? You know, his past life was quite boring. Since he knew that he was the first family in Tianqian City, Musian spent every day in the music hall, listening to music, or going to the pleasure boat to row a boat. Although the girls there only sell their art but not their bodies, Musian is cute and rich, so he is naturally very popular with girls. But no matter what, his past experiences should be extremely boring for such a strong man from ancient times. The real turning point began when he awakened his past life memories. At that time, he got a personal interface, through which he activated one achievement after another, and even entered the state of enlightenment before he was 20 years old. Then again, where did my natural furnace cauldron body come from? Musian suddenly thought. Because the natural furnace cauldron is the heaven, so it is an innate physique. If this is true, why did I never see the natural furnace cauldron physique when I didn't awaken my memory in Tianqian City? As Musian was thinking about this, he suddenly saw the woman next to him seemed to be a little uncomfortable and twisted her body, then quietly turned her face away from him. The original witch's consciousness had returned to her body at some point, and the person in her side had become a yellow-skirted maid. Sister Mengru, what's wrong? Musian couldn't help but ask with concern. Wei Mengru glanced at the young man and said faintly, "You have been flirting since just now, and you ask me what's wrong. The charming physique of the nine-tailed sky fox has been exuding a charming aura since just now, didn't you notice it yourself?" As she said this, the maid blushed and secretly glanced at him a few more times. For some reason, when Musian was thinking seriously about things just now, she always felt that her young master was very good looking, and then as she looked at him, she had the urge to push him down in her mind. This must be the effect of the nine-tailed sky fox's body, and it must not be that she is too lustful, the maid secretly comforted her psychologically. Musian reacted and quickly suppressed the breath in his body slowly back into the furnace. He sighed helplessly. Although his strength had been significantly improved after the Enlightenment realm, a problem also arose. In the past, he was able to suppress his natural charm because of the shielding technique of the spirit dragon, but now that the shielding technique has been lifted, he cannot control his charm like the queen of the demon realm before he enters the Hedeo realm. Wherever Musian goes now, he will definitely attract the attention of the opposite sex. Sometimes I wonder if this nine-tailed fox body is a good thing for me. Musian sighed lightly. In Juzhu, there is no one like him who can't even control his natural charm. But after Linger ascends to the sky, it will be no problem to cast a shielding technique on me. He suddenly froze for a moment and said to himself, unable to control it. As if thinking of something important, Musian got goosebumps on his body and his eyes slowly widened. No. In Juzhu, he is not the only one who can't control his charm. Musian stood up suddenly. What's wrong? Wei Mengru asked subconsciously when she saw the young master's look of doubt and uncertainty. Just now I have been thinking about why Mu Wanji sent me to Tianqian City, and besides the two charming bodies in the demon world, what other physiques can make the leader of an ancient herdsman clan have to cover his true face with a veil? Musian stared blankly at Wei Mengru's eyes and murmured, I think, I already know the answer. The candlelight flickered in the room. A beautiful mature woman in a gorgeous long dress was sitting on the soft couch, and the petite and delicate Loli was curled up in her arms, gently rubbing her beautiful legs like a kitten. You've grown up so much, why are you still like a child? If Muir saw you, she would probably laugh at you. Mu Wanj gently stroked Mu Ji's smooth hair, her voice was gentle and sweet, and there seemed to be a faint pink glow in her dark eyes. That was one of the symbols of a natural charm, but it was obviously ineffective for Mu Ji. She swung her little feet and said lightly, it doesn't matter, maybe Big Brother wants to stick to you like me, but he just can't let go of his face. As she spoke, Mu Ji raised her eyes with a bit of hope and asked, Mom, are you going to leave again after coming back this time? Mu Wanj did not say anything. Mu Ji rolled her eyes and said with a smile, Sister, are you going to leave again after coming back this time? In the past, Mu Wanj had told Mu Ji not to call her mom, saying that it would make her old. It's just that Mu Ji got used to calling her mom when she was a child, so she can't change it now. Mu Wanj then showed a gentle smile, I won't leave again in the short term. Mu Ji's eyes flashed with a hint of joy, and she was about to speak. At this time, Mu Wanji seemed to have noticed something, gently stroked Mu Ji's cute little face, and said softly, Muir came to see me, I think there is something to say, you go back tonight. Okay, actually, I won't disturb your conversation if I stay. Mu Ji thought about it, and sighed again, but Big Brother may feel uncomfortable. In this case, I will come to see you tomorrow, she continued. Mu Wanji smiled and nodded, and then quietly watched the girl in her arms quietly turned into a deep purple light and drifted away. After a while, there was a knock on the door. The door is not locked, just come in. Hearing the voice of the woman in the room, Musian pushed open the door and saw a beautiful mature woman with a dignified posture and gentle temperament. Musian glanced at the mark on the soft couch beside Mu Wanj and asked, did Mu Ji come here just now? Mu Wanj hummed softly, that child is actually very afraid of loneliness, so she came to see me every day after I came back during this period. She is obviously the supreme being of the forbidden land of life, with a power that makes all the cultivators in Juzhu fearful, but in front of Mu Wanj, she is unexpectedly like an ordinary little girl. Musian remained silent. Did I really have an engagement with her? Musian suddenly asked. Mu Wanji smiled, actually, if I have to say, that marriage was arranged by you. In the past, you said that you liked Ger very much, and there were no other people of the same age in the forbidden land of life. Ger also happened to like you very much. When she was a child, she sneaked into your room every night to warm your veins. Later, you took the initiative to tell her that you must marry her when you grow up. So it turned out that it was not arranged by Mu Wanji, but a promise made by the young and ignorant me at that time. Musian's eyelids twitched slightly, didn't you stop her? Ger is a good child, She is very suitable for you. Mu Wanji smiled softly. Although she seems a bit fierce and brutal sometimes, she won't stab her own people. Musian walked into the room and closed the door. He looked at the dignified beauty sitting on the couch and smiled. What if I tell you now that I don't want Muji, but you? The sudden question made Mu Wanj stunned for a moment, but she heard Musian talking to himself. In the past, I always felt that I was raising fish. The more fish in the fish pond, the more achievements I have. Of course, I love them too, no matter who they are. But maybe he himself is a fish in the fish pond? Under Mu Wanj's surprised eyes, Musian suddenly reached out and tried to lift her veil. Mu Wanj quickly reacted, complaining with a bit of dissatisfaction in her tone. Muir, you can't do this. If you see my appearance, you will be charmed by me. As she spoke, the spiritual energy in her body burst out, trying to isolate Musian's palm. The brilliant golden light shield enveloped Mu Wanj, and Musian's palm, which was about to touch the woman's veil, felt a burst of scorching heat. He subconsciously wanted to retract his hand. But Musian gritted his teeth, endured the hot breath that seemed to melt iron, and put his palm into the golden light shield. Swish! Almost at that moment, his palm seemed to be able to see the bones in an instant, and then quickly repaired the epidermis in the next moment. For a cultivator in the state of enlightenment, as long as a wisp of spiritual consciousness is not destroyed, the body can be reshaped. But the pain during this period will not be eliminated. A trace of heartache flashed in Mu Wanj's eyes, and seeing Musian's determined look, she finally quietly retracted the golden light shield. At this time, Musian had already grabbed her veil. He gently pulled the veil off. The candlelight illuminated the woman's face, which was so beautiful that it was beyond description. It seemed that she had the temperament of a young woman, and her beautiful eyes were gentle and compassionate. So beautiful! Musian exclaimed sincerely, staring at Mu Wanj's face quietly. And her eyes faintly shining with pink light. He asked softly, you are also a nine-tailed fox, right? The moment the voice fell, Mu Wanj's beautiful eyes slowly widened, and there seemed to be some surprise in her eyes. After a while, there was a trace of relief in her eyes. And this expression has proved Musian's guess. In this world, he and Byruoxi should be the only two people who have the body of a nine-tailed fox. But Mu Wanj's charming body is undoubtedly also the body of a nine-tailed fox. Muir. Mu Wanj opened her red lips slightly, and was about to say something. But at this time, Musian said again in a gentle tone, you also have the same personal interface as me, but there is only one achievement in your personal interface, right? Let me guess, maybe you are not only the body of a nine-tailed fox, you also have the protection of a sword fairy, a natural spirit body, and a natural Taoist fetus. Maybe you even have the achievement of the Lord of Heaven. Musian said to himself, I have all the physical qualities and Taoist skills that Yao Meng and Ruoxi have. And your personal interface is clean and has nothing. But you have me. Musian's voice suddenly became much lighter. I think the only achievement in your personal interface should be related to me, right? Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 577. You should be wondering now why I know you have a personal interface, and why I guess that your achievements are related to me, right? Musian kept his eyes moving to the side to avoid seeing Mu Wanj's face and being charmed by her, observe the scene, collect information, then make assumptions, and finally verify. This is just my guess, but from the looks of it, my guess should be correct, right? Obviously, the veil that Mu Wanj had covered before was also a spirit weapon, which could conceal its own aura, and even temporarily block the charm of the nine-tailed heavenly fox. At this moment, after the veil was taken off, it was not only her face that was revealed, but even the charm emanating from her body could no longer be concealed. Even if they were both nine-tailed heavenly foxes, if they looked at Mu Wanj now, they might really be instantly charmed. After all, although there was no difference in their physiques, Mu Wanj's realm was obviously higher than Musian's. The flickering candlelight illuminated Mu Wanji's delicate and gentle face. Her red lips were slightly parted, and her voice was gentle, but it seemed a bit complicated. When did you find out? It's not important. What's important is whether my previous guess was correct. Musian did not look at Mu Wanji, pretending to be indifferent, and continued, there is only one achievement in your personal interface, but that achievement happens to be related to me, right? Knock knock. Mu Wanji's green jade fingers tapped the table lightly, and her nails were painted with a light pink, attracting Musian's attention. You guessed right. She said softly, I do have a personal interface like you, there is only one achievement in that personal interface. And, I am also a chaotic body, Mu Wanji said again. Musian's eyes slowly widened. Although he had thought of this possibility before meeting Mu Wanji, after he really verified his guess from this woman's mouth, he was still shocked and even unbelievable in his heart. According to what the original witch said before, the personal interface is a magical power that only the original witch has, and it is the only magical power in the world. But now, Mu Wanji is indeed the same as him, with the same physique. It is even possible that the title that Mu Wanji has is exactly the same as his. Why don't you dare look at me when you talk? Mu Wanji tilted her head slightly, looking at Musian with a puzzled look. Clearly, he was still saying something like I like you more than your daughter, but now he doesn't even dare to look at her. Didn't you say before that if you look at you, you will be instantly charmed? Even though he was extremely shocked at the moment, Musian still kept a calm smile on his face. Now you finally know to be careful. Even though Mu Wanji was so gentle, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at the boy and said softly, fortunately, the person you are facing this time is me. If it was the queen of the demon realm or the nine-tailed sky fox, I'm afraid you would have completely become a slave under their skirts and serve them for the rest of your life. Her tone was filled with some warnings and lessons from an elder, but her voice was extremely soft, as if it was filled with an invisible and intangible charm, which made people feel itchy. They won't seduce me directly. Musian smiled casually and said softly, now it's you who makes me a little confused. Nine-tailed queen has not yet condensed her demon body. As for the queen of the demon realm, if she wanted to, she could have directly seduced Musian to the point of infatuation when she was in Tianqian City in the past, and she didn't have to wait until now. Mu Wanji was silent for a long time. She naturally heard the other meaning in Musian's words. He knew the queen of the demon realm, who was also involved with the nine-tailed sky fox, so he was not worried that the two demon emperors would seduce him, but now Musian had a strong suspicion of her. That's right. After all, my chaos body is exactly the same as yours. It's normal for you to doubt whether I have other intentions towards you. After a long silence, Mu Wanji suddenly chuckled, then elegantly rolled up a strand of hair and whispered, I think the original witch should have told you that she is the only one in the world who has a personal interface, so you are wondering why I have the same personal interface as you. Mu Wanji gently raised her fingertips, and a green lotus quietly bloomed at her fingertips. Pure World Blue Lotus. Although it is far less than 1/10 of the Pure World Blue Lotus performed by Yao Meng, there is no doubt that this is indeed the Taoist technique that Yao Meng possesses. She raised her beautiful eyes and gazed at Musian tenderly, smiling and saying, if I want, I can copy or even create everything I want in this world, including a person's Taoism and physique. This is my Taoism. However, this magical power can only be used once. Musian hesitated slightly, when did you use this magical power on me? When you were young, Mu Wanji answered without hiding anything. So, you knew that I had a personal interface in the past, so you chose to adopt me. Musian narrowed his eyes slightly, but there was still doubt in his heart. He always felt that something was wrong, but now he couldn't explain it clearly. In the past, when you were born, someone wrote a letter to me, hoping that I could bring you up. At that time, the blood of the Mu clan had begun to decline, and even I was powerless to save the situation, so I agreed to this request. Mu Wanji covered her face with a veil again, with a bit of nostalgia in her beautiful eyes. She raised her head slightly, as if she was recalling the past. None of the 8 major families in the Taisha period survived to this day. Even if the ancient powers in the past had the power to change fate, they could not stop the torrent of history. The blood of the family will gradually decline. This is an unchangeable rule. Even as strong as Mu Wanji, she can only go with the flow. She told me that if she is willing to bring you up, she will make the Mu clan revitalize again in the future and restore the glory of the ancient Mu clan. Muzian raised his eyebrows slightly. You believe others' words so easily. This woman didn't expect that. She looked innocent, and even her behavior seemed a little naive. How did she cultivate to the state of harmony? Mu Wanj blinked and looked at Muzian in confusion, saying, that person won't lie. I'm not worried that she will lie to me. Muzian looked at the woman who had been veiled again, and the beautiful face that was vaguely visible under the veil, and suddenly asked, the person you said you had an appointment with is Shang Yanfei, right? Mu Wanj looked at the boy in surprise. How did you know? You almost reported the sect master's ID number just now. How could I not know? Muzian didn't know whether he should complain for a while. He thought this was a dignified and mature beautiful woman, but now it seems, although she has a mature and sexy body, her heart seems to be a little naive. If Muji didn't look too young, even if someone told Muzian at this moment that Muji was Mu Wanj's mother, Muzian might have believed it. So you used the Taoist technique that can only be used once to copy my ability? Muzian suddenly asked. Mu Wanj nodded softly. I always feel that something is wrong. No matter how innocent a person is, it is reasonable that he would not use the Taoist magic that can only be used once in a lifetime on a child. At that time, Muzian frowned secretly, staring at Mu Wanj's face covered with a veil and her gentle eyes. Or is Mu Wanj really so innocent, and she really does whatever the sect leader's sister says? Muzian quietly retracted his gaze and fell into deep thought. Seeing this, Mu Wanj's eyes softened a little, stretched out her slender hands, and slowly brewed tea. And this elegant action also attracted Muzian's attention, and his eyes couldn't help but peek at this woman a few more times. For some reason, he always felt a very strange, but familiar feeling. That feeling is hard to describe, as if they had met somewhere before. Is it a memory of childhood? Have a cup of tea and relax first. At this time, Mu Wanj's gentle voice suddenly sounded, and also brought Muzian back to reality from his previous thoughts. He stretched out his hand calmly, and at the moment of taking the teacup, he suddenly used his spiritual energy to control the teacup in mid-air, and then his hand swept across Mu Wanj's face and took off her veil again. Only this time, Muzian looked directly at Mu Wanj's face. Mu Wanj's eyes slowly widened, with a look of helplessness on her face. It was indeed a breathtakingly beautiful and peerless face. If coupled with her gentle and moving temperament, Muzian felt that it was enough to rank in the top 3 in his fish pond. Almost at the moment he saw Mu Wanj's true face, Muzian's mind was rippled, and for a moment, he even had the urge to surrender to her pomegranate skirt. The charm of the 9-tailed fox was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. Muzian bit the tip of his tongue lightly, trying to keep himself calm as much as possible. At the same time, he lowered his eyes. Logically speaking, the appearance of a peerless beauty, and the mature and royal face that Muzian liked the most, he would never forget it in a short time. However, just in the moment when he lowered his eyes, Muzian completely forgot what Mu Wanj looked like. Even her voice was completely forgotten. Holding the veil in his hand, Muzian was silent for a long time and didn't speak. Mu Wanj opened her rosy little mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but seeing Muzian's silence, she couldn't help but close her mouth, with a look of annoyance on her face. Well, it seems to be messed up. I'm afraid she wouldn't have thought of that. Musian sighed faintly. The technique of shielding the secrets of heaven that the sect master's sister is proud of will become the evidence pointing to her at this moment. The peerless face that will never be remembered. Among the people Musian knows, only one person can shield the secrets of heaven to this extent. Musian raised his head and looked at the beautiful woman. Are you also one of the sect master's avatars who became three pure in one breath? Mu Wanji's body stiffened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Yes, since Musian was in Tianqian City in the past, he has had an indistinct relationship with Shang Yanfei, and even many of the entries in his current personal interface are from the assistance of the sect master's sister. She has been operating for such a long time, and in the end, she would tell the secret of her personal interface to a so-called Mu clan leader in the Taisha period for no reason? The Shang Yanfei that Musian knew was not the kind of person who would make wedding dresses for others. Every step she took had her own purpose. Including the appearance of Mu Wanji, it was also the result of her transformation into the three pure ones. Musian sighed softly, so I really was born from a stone with heaven as my father and earth as my mother. Before coming to the forbidden land of life, he had a little expectation, such as being able to see his biological parents. But now? Well, it doesn't matter, anyway, he has never seen his parents since he was a child. Musian is not a person who lacks love, but he wanted to see what his parents look like if he could. There is something I still can't figure out. It stands to reason that everything the sect master's sister does has her own purpose. Was she really burned by the karma fire or was she intentional? Musian suddenly asked. Blocking the opportunity often involves cause and effect, and it is not surprising that it will be backfired. She was not intentional when she was backfired by the karma fire, Mu Wanji said softly. This sentence is equivalent to her admitting her identity. But with her ability, it is not difficult to suppress the karma fire. After all, she is a natural furnace, Mu Wanj said again. Shang Yanfei has everything Musian has, and the natural furnace can suppress the karma fire, so she naturally does not worry about being backlashed. Musian frowned secretly. Then why did the sect master ask me to suppress the karma fire at that time? I can't figure it out. It doesn't matter whether you figure it out or not. Maybe she figured it out, Mu Wanj said with soft eyes. Musian was stunned, and it took him a long time to react. The Chinese language is so profound. Seemingly remembering something important, Musian asked again, what about Muji? Was that also arranged by the sect master? That was my arrangement. Mu Wanj smiled gently. Muji is a cute kid, and she has a good talent, so when I took you to the forbidden land of life, I took her in as well. The three pure ones are not simply clones, but each clone has its own spiritual consciousness, which is equivalent to three different people. So, is this something that the sect master did not plan? Musian was speechless for a while. Do you know what the sect master wants to do? Musian suddenly asked. Shang Yanfei started planning tens of thousands of years ago, and each clone did different things. It would be a lie to say that Musian didn't care what she wanted to do. Mu Wanji was obviously a little annoyed after her true identity was exposed, but in front of this child, she still wanted to maintain her elder demeanor, so she smiled gently and said softly, I will take you to a place tomorrow, and you will know when the time comes. Where to? Musian asked subconsciously. Let him go back with a lot of doubts now. Musian felt that he might not be able to wait until tomorrow, and he would be suffocated to death at night. The ancestral land of the Blue Clan, Mu Wanji said. Go to the hometown of the senior sister? Is it that mysterious ancient ship? After a brief doubt, Musian's eyes moved slightly, and he immediately thought of the mysterious ancient ship he saw in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan before. Just when he was about to ask something else, he suddenly felt that his brain seemed to be gradually becoming hazy. Then, he felt that the woman in front of him was so beautiful, with her tender red lips, the charm of a mature woman, and even her smiles, which seemed to have infinite charm. At this moment, Musian seemed to have only this woman in his eyes. Muwanji seemed to have noticed something and raised her head subconsciously. When she met Musian's burning gaze, her heart trembled slightly, and a thought popped up in her mind almost immediately. The charm of the nine-tailed fox has taken effect. I have been a little stuck in the past 2 days after all. I have been pushing the plot all the time, and my brain is a little confused, but now it is almost done, and it should not be stuck anymore. By the way, I would like to recommend the monthly ticket Blade 3 times to comfort you in the new week. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to let us know. We will deal with it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 578. The nine-tailed fox's charm can instantly destroy a person's rationality, making the other person only see the person with the charmed body. Seeing that Musian's eyes seemed a little dazed, Muwanj reacted almost immediately and subconsciously wanted to cover her veil to cover her charmed body again. Just now, Musian wanted to know the truth, so he used his will to resist the charm of the nine-tailed fox. And when he knew everything he wanted to know, that firm will gradually disappeared. And what came after that was that the charm of the nine-tailed fox continued to wear away Musian's will. You have to calm down. Zhi'er may not have gone far. If she sees us, she may misunderstand us. Muwanj's tone was as gentle as usual, but she spoke a little faster, enough to imagine her worries at the moment. Although she is the clone of the three pure ones, Muwanj has her own spiritual consciousness and furnace. As long as the original body does not give orders, she is a complete self. In the eyes of others, the supreme of the forbidden land of life is an indifferent and ruthless ancient creature, but Muwanji watched Mu grow up. She also knows how much Zhi'er likes Mu. If Zhi'er knew that Mu was actually seduced by her at this moment, I'm afraid she would think that she did it on purpose. Mu shook his head gently and whispered, "You should have left a Taoist spell to block the secrets of heaven on both you and Mu, right? So I don't remember the relevant memories between you, and I don't know what the relationship between me and Mu is. But I know that I actually like you more than Mu. More like me?" Muwanji's beautiful eyes widened slightly, as if incredible. Does this child know what she is talking about? She is just a clone, and she and Mu have almost no intersection. How could this child like her? No, he was affected by his natural charm, and he didn't really have any thoughts about her. Looking at Musian's affectionate and gentle eyes at this moment, Muwanj's heart trembled slightly for a moment. As one of the avatars of Yiqi Huasanqing, the patriarch of the ancient herdsmen, Muwanj actually has her own personality, but this personality still needs to obey some arrangements of the main body. Taking in Musian was one of the plans arranged by the main body. Wei Mengru's matter was also a plan that had been arranged long ago. But even so, Musian is still the child she watched grow up. It is impossible to say that she has no feelings for him and does not like him. But, that kind of liking is not love. If not, when she saw Musian saying that he wanted to marry Mu, she would not have readily agreed to the marriage that the two children had arranged themselves. But now she was confessed without warning. No, she should calm down now. It is the natural charm that affects this child, not that he really likes her. Besides, she couldn't let Zhi'er down. Muwanji gradually calmed herself down, with a forced and gentle smile on her face. "You are just affected by my charming body. I will put you into a deep sleep later. You should be able to recover after getting up tomorrow." She must stop him before he makes a mistake. After all, she is Musian's elder, and she must behave like an elder. Musian showed a look of loss, lowered his head slightly, and whispered, so you don't like me. Seeing that Musian could restrain his charm and gave up on his own initiative, Muwanji was relieved. But for some reason, she felt a little empty in her heart, as if she had given up something important. This was something that shouldn't have happened. She clearly rejected Musian's love firmly, but after rejecting him, she saw his lost look, and she herself felt a little worried. It's not that I don't like you, it's just that my liking for you doesn't come from love. Muwanji suppressed the feeling of gain and loss in her heart, and said softly in the tone of an elder's admonition, compared to the love my original body has for you, I care about you more like an elder for a younger generation. When she said the last part, there was a bit of tenderness in her eyes, and she said, when I took you back to the forbidden land of life, you might have been only 7 or 8 years old, not even in the realm of refining essence. I didn't expect that you have grown up so much now. Musian was silent for a while, raised his head and looked at the gorgeous mature woman who had covered her face with a veil again, and whispered, the spiritual consciousness of each clone is different, and you don't have any feelings for me, is that right? Muwanji nodded gently and hummed. But for some reason, at the moment of nodding, there was a kind of inexplicable loss in my heart, like a huge stone stuck in my heart. I think it should be because of the feelings of the original body for him. If I marry Muji, will you be happy? Musian suddenly asked. Muwanji was startled, then smiled softly and said, this is a personal relationship between you and Ger, so I won't interfere too much. Musian suddenly raised his head and stared into Muwanji's eyes when he heard this, so, sister sect leader's feelings for me are the same as yours. Muwanj shook her head gently, her feelings for you are very complicated, unlike mine, but the other clone has pure feelings for you. You have seen her before. She is the messenger of the Sabbath. She should be talking about Muwanwan, Musian knew it in his heart. After suppressing his inner impulse for Muwanj, he stood up and planned to leave. And it was at this time that Muwanj finally came to his senses. This child, I'm afraid she was not charmed by her at all just now. Musian resisted her charm, and the conversation with her just now was actually to trick her. Because Musian did not believe what Muwanj said before, and even doubted her identity. It was not until Muwanj accidentally said the clone Muwanwan that Musian completely dispelled his doubts about Muwanj. After all, the only people in the world who knew that Muwanwan was the clone of Shang Yanfei were Musian and Yao Meng. Muwanji stared at the boy's back with resentment. When did this kid become so calculating? He used to be a very simple boy. You have been testing whether I am her clone, right? Muwanji looked at Musian who was about to leave the room, and suddenly called him softly. Musian did not deny it, I did want to test whether you were lying, sorry. You were not the kind of person who would play tricks before. Muwanji frowned slightly, with a hint of resentment in her beautiful eyes, so do you believe that I am the clone of the master now? She was still struggling with whether to agree to this child after hearing Musian's confession, but she didn't expect that he was just testing her. Even though Muwanji was so gentle, she felt ashamed and annoyed when she heard Musian admit that he was testing her. Because this made herself, who was still struggling with whether to accept Musian's love, look so stupid. She was obviously older than Musian by tens of thousands of years, but she was played by a guy who was just a boy in her eyes. And he played her more than once. To be honest, I still don't believe it, Musian suddenly said. When I saw you just now, I had a sense of déjà vu, as if I remembered my mother who I seemed to have seen when I was a child. Musian said softly, but I didn't expect that it was just a person I imagined after all. The forbidden land of life, the ancient Mu clan, although they all have the surname Mu, have nothing to do with him. Musian is like a ghost wandering in the long river of history, and there is no place for him anywhere. Muwanji's eyes changed slightly. For some reason, when she looked at Musian's back at this moment, she seemed to touch the softest part of her heart. Is that so? Although you have deduced that I am the incarnation of Shang Yanfei, do you still have doubts about my identity? A soft and pleasant voice suddenly sounded, accompanied by the sound of footsteps coming quietly from behind. Musian turned his head subconsciously, only to find that the temperament of the woman in front of him had changed. No, not only her temperament, but also her tone and even her appearance seemed to have changed. Sect Master, Musian murmured subconsciously. Shang Yanfei took 2 steps forward, pushed Musian to the wall behind him, and then stood on tiptoe, kissing Musian's face lightly through the veil. The familiar breath almost instantly rushed into his body, and Musian's eyes slowly widened. This is indeed the breath of the sect master's sister. Do you believe it now? Under Musian's surprised eyes, the woman seemed to lower her head shyly. By the way. She gently pinned a strand of hair behind her ear and whispered, "Don't tell Jia about what happened today." Until he returned to his guest room, Musian was still in a state of almost daze. Before meeting Muwanji, Musian had already imagined a series of amazing plans behind the scenes, such as that he was born as a pawn in Muwanji's plan, and Muwanji let him stay in Tianqian City to facilitate the execution of her plan, so that he could get many entry achievements through the personal interface. Unexpectedly, the real mastermind behind the scenes was actually the sect master. Linger followed the scheming sister of the sect master. It's a pity that she can just want to eat every day, Musian suddenly sighed for no reason. He thought that the intersection between him and the sect master was only in Lianji sect, but when the truth came to light, he realized, it turned out that they had met from the beginning. Why did you feel so absent-minded after meeting Muwanji? Could it be that she molested you? At this moment, a cold and pleasant voice suddenly sounded in the room, pulling Musian back to reality from his previous thoughts. At night, Wei Mengru had changed into a rather thin white lingerie, which covered her sexy and mature body, and her long hair was casually scattered. However, this extremely simple and concise dress actually added a sense of laziness at home, and it was also difficult to hide the cold beauty of the maid. You just came back and stared at your maid with a mean look, are you a pervert? Wei Mengru glanced at the young master with disdain, and muttered again, I can smell a woman's fragrance as soon as I enter the door. Musian came back to his senses, sat on the edge of the bed, and then concisely stated the conclusion, Muwanj does have a personal interface. It's just that her Taoism directly copied all my abilities, and even she can only use that Taoism once. This is what she said, but I don't know if it's true. Can copy all the abilities of a person. Wei Mengru said to herself in surprise, if there is such an exaggerated ability in this world, there should be restrictions. Musian nodded. He thought so too. So he felt that Muwanj should not have lied to him just now. Otherwise, being able to copy the Taoism and physique of any cultivator in Zhuzhou without limit, wouldn't that be cheating? Don't you have anything else to ask? Musian suddenly asked. Wei Mengru rolled her eyes at the young master, if you want to say it, you will say it naturally, without me asking. After being with the young master for so long, she could naturally sense that Musian's mood was a bit complicated at the moment. But a qualified maid knows what to ask and what not to ask. And the fragrance on your body stinks, I don't want to get close to you for the time being, Wei Mengru deliberately added with a straight face. The fragrance stinks? Musian lowered his head and sniffed, it seems that he can indeed smell the fragrance of a mature woman on his body. I think it was accidentally contaminated when he was close to Muwanji just now. Musian stared at the maid standing beside him and asked with a smile, Sister Mengru, are you jealous? Wei Mengru, you have always liked to be sentimental since the past, but I didn't expect it to be the same now. Looking down at Musian with a look of contempt, it was hard to tell who was the master for a while. Musian was silent for a while after hearing this. Then he held her soft little hand and whispered, I actually hope you can be jealous, At least this will make me realize that someone still cares about me. Wei Mengru looked at her young master with some doubts, and asked tentatively, "Sage mode?" She heard the young master say this word. Generally, men will enter a state of self-reflection of regret, emptiness, loneliness and why I rushed after finishing the matter, and this is generally called sage mode. Musian looked up at the tall and cold maid standing beside him, and smiled. Nothing happened between Mu Wanji and me, but I realized something from her. Sister Mengru, I really don't seem to have parents. He was silent for a while, and suddenly smiled. Of course, I don't care. Wei Mengru couldn't help but look at him. Although the young master looked indifferent, she knew what he was thinking in her heart. Although the young master had everything when he was in Tianqian City, all he had was the love of girls. They either liked his looks or the Mu family behind him. The only one who treated him sincerely was Elder Ren, so the young master was almost completely devoid of family affection. Perhaps he had always wanted to meet his parents for this purpose. Although it's not good to say this, I actually always treat you as my brother, Wei Mengru said expressionlessly. Musian raised his eyebrows slightly. Which sister would kick her brother out of the carriage? Wei Mengru couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Is it because you were not serious at the beginning and wanted to secretly rub someone's legs with the back of your hand in the carriage? Musian smiled, stared at Wei Mengru's beautiful profile like ice and snow, and whispered, "Then do you allow me to rub it secretly now?" "No." As expected, Wei Mengru refused straightforwardly. Musian was not surprised. After all, the maid smelled the scent of other women on him. It was normal to be angry. Just as Musian was thinking about these messy things, suddenly, a pair of hands gently held his face, and Musian slowly stood up under her gentle guidance. She stared straight into Musian's eyes, and at this moment, she seemed to have lost the coldness she had maintained before, as if she was really like an older sister, looking at him with a doting look. Wei Mengru tilted her head slightly and said softly, "But it is natural for a sister to comfort a lost brother. So, although I don't let you rub it, I will let you." Musian was stunned for a long time, and suddenly smiled silently. "That's why it's really hard to refuse to say Yuja." Suddenly, Musian pressed Wei Mengru's shoulders, pushed her roughly to the door behind him, and lowered his head to kiss Wei Mengru's cold red lips. Wei Mengru hooked her arms around Musian's neck, letting him invade her lips and sniffing the fragrance on her neck. She knew that what she did today was wrong, because it was totally inconsistent with her previous coldness in front of the young master, and might make the young master think that she was a slutty maid who would actively seduce her master. But she still wanted to do it. After seeing his visible loss today, she wanted to fill the emptiness in the young master's heart and tell him that she was not only his maid, but also his wife. If he wanted, she could also be his sister and accompany him at all times. This is not just the maid's duty to comfort the master, the main reason is that she is too greedy. She wants everything from the master. Not only his love, but also his body, and even the feelings he has poured into her. So, she wants to seduce her master, and then. Diamond sued. "I feel very good today, I am in a bad mood, hee." So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 579. Are you really going to the Blue Clan's ancestral land with Mu Wanji tomorrow? On the spacious and luxurious brocade couch, the hazy gauze curtains concealed the beautiful scene inside, and only the cold and pleasant voice of the maid could be heard vaguely. But there seemed to be a little more laziness and charm in the voice that had never been there before. Musian hugged Wei Mengru's soft waist and said hum softly. In fact, he had believed most of Mu Wanji's words. Now the only doubt was where Mu Wanji went and what she was doing after she sent him to Tianqian City. And, why was he subjected to the Taoist magic of shielding the secrets of heaven? And according to Mu Wanji's words, maybe he would know it after going to the Blue Clan's ancestral land. Speaking of which, It seems that I haven't seen the little white-skirt senior sister for a while. And the charming and enchanting sister Fei Ying, the pair of sisters, one cold and the other charming, are simply superb. Thinking of the cold white dress of senior sister, and the pair of snow-white jade boots, and Lan Fei Ying's sexy and graceful figure, Musian's heart couldn't help but feel hot. Seeing that his young master suddenly fell silent again, Wei Mengru frowned slightly and said lightly, when hugging his own maid, he was still thinking about other women in his mind. Should we say that men are so mean, or is it that only the young master is an exception? I just thought of senior sister and she was noticed. Sister Mengru is so sensitive. Musian pinched Wei Mengru's delicate waist with a sighing tone, and smiled. I was just thinking about where Mu Wanj found Muji, the evildoer. Muji was in the state of enlightenment since birth, and he merged with the Tao not long after practicing. Even the spirit dragon and the princess who were born with the favor of the Tao were not so exaggerated. Under normal circumstances, even if the blood of the parent's generation is extremely powerful, it is impossible to perfectly inherit the blood to the offspring. What's more, she attained enlightenment immediately after inheriting it. Musian suddenly thought, since Mu Wanji is not Muji's biological mother, how evil must Muji's parents be to give birth to a girl who attained enlightenment right after birth? Just as he was thinking about this, Musian suddenly felt a strange feeling coming from his body, and he suddenly had the urge to leave the room and go for a walk. No. It's not his urge, but the forbidden things of life that are affecting him. It seems that Muji has used the forbidden things on me again. Musian's eyes flickered. What is she trying to do out of the blue? What's wrong? Wei Mengru pressed down Musian's hand that was making trouble in the quilt, looked at the handsome profile of her master, and asked softly. It's nothing, I just suddenly want to go out and relax. Musian gently stroked Wei Mengru's hair and said softly, tomorrow I have to ask Sister Mengru to protect me secretly. Wei Mengru rolled her eyes at him and said lightly, you have already reached the state of enlightenment, why do you always want others to protect you? It seemed that she suddenly became the cold and arrogant maid again. Just when she was in bed, she was shyly calling the master. Musian couldn't help but mutter secretly, after being fed, Sister Mengru also entered the sage mode. Feed. Wei Mengru was stunned at first, and then she noticed Musian's eyes scanning her body up and down. She immediately reacted, covered the quilt, glared at him with a red face, and was about to say something. I'll go out and relax first. Before the maid got angry, Musian reacted quickly and got out of bed and slipped away. If he stayed any longer, he was worried that Sister Mengru would take out the chain. But thanks to Wei Mengru, after being healed by the maid tonight, Musian's original mentality of being a little worried about gains and losses has long been adjusted. Without parents, there is no. Anyway, he has other girls. The forbidden object of life, this is a taboo object involving cause and effect. In the past, Musian was able to become the eldest son of the Mu family in Tianqian City without anyone noticing anything unusual. Musian speculated that it was this taboo object that played a role. Following the guidance of the forbidden object of life, Musian walked through the palace and walked along a mottled path without realizing it. He just passed this place during the day, and the ancient tree of life was in the distance, so Musian had a deep impression of it. Just as he was wondering why the forbidden object led him here, the ancient tree in the distance that seemed to support the entire sky suddenly shook violently. The lush ancient tree of life was like a giant that came to life, with branches extending outward continuously, like a group of demons dancing wildly. As the ancient tree swayed, dots of emerald green fluorescence quietly fell, like fireflies flying all over the sky. I should have asked Sister Mengru and Yao Meng to come out to see it, it's so beautiful. Looking at this galaxy of fireflies under the gray sky, Musian was shocked. Until the end, the countless green brilliance quietly condensed, and then burst out, branches and leaves extended outward, penetrating the clouds, as if covering the entire forbidden land of life at this moment. The ancient tree of life burst out with surging vitality, and every leaf was crystal green. Musian was watching absent-mindedly, and suddenly someone covered his eyes from behind. "Guess who I am?" Musian heard this familiar voice and felt the petite body gently pressing against his back. After being silent for a while, he said helplessly, "Muji, what's the matter with you? You even used the taboo of life to let me leave the room. Big brother is so boring." Muji seemed to have lost interest all of a sudden after her true identity was exposed. After letting go of her hands, she jumped in front of him. Musian only felt a faint fragrance wafting from the girl's body. Muji raised her face, curiously observing Musian with a pair of bright and clear eyes, and then bent over and sniffed him slightly. "Oh, what are you doing?" Musian was a little uncomfortable with the girl's kitten-like movements, so he subconsciously pressed her forehead and pushed her away gently. The silver hair was quite soft, and Musian couldn't help but stroke it a few more times when he pushed it away. Muji seemed to be immersed in Musian's head-touching killing, and subconsciously closed her eyes with a happy look on her face. Soon after, she suddenly came to her senses and gently pushed away Musian's hand. "Don't do this to me as if you were teasing a child." "The problem is, aren't you just a child like this?" Musian stared silently at Muji's cute little face, then smiled and asked, "Tell me, why do you have to stay out? Explain." The silver-haired little girl looked at him with a smile and said with a smile, "My mother told me just now that she said you will leave the forbidden place of life tomorrow, so I want to spend some time alone with my big brother, can't you?" At the end of the sentence, she stretched out her little hand and grabbed one of Musian's hands, and whispered, "Mom finally came back, but she is leaving soon, and you are leaving soon, too. It's very difficult here. Soon I will be alone again. I can't bear to leave my big brother. So until then, can you stay with your sister for a while?" Musian didn't know how to answer, so he just sighed softly and said, "So you want me to stay in the forbidden land of life, and you are using the taboo rules now?" The taboo rules in this space are being rewritten quietly, and the only person who can rewrite the rules of the forbidden land of life is Muji. Big Brother's perception is too amazing, isn't it? Can he actually detect that the taboo rules are being rewritten? A look of surprise flashed in Muji's eyes, and then she quickly smiled, "But it's too late to react now. As long as the rules are revised so that those below Hideo cannot enter or leave the forbidden land of life, you will not be able to leave the forbidden land of life." This was also the decision Muji made after thinking about it just now after Muwanj explained to Muji that they were leaving the forbidden land of life tomorrow. She didn't want to be alone in the forbidden area of life anymore. "Stay, what next?" Musian suddenly asked. Muji's eyes rolled around, and there was an inexplicable charm in her smile. She put her delicate body in Musian's arms and whispered, "Then we can do a lot of things. Actually, my sister is very interested in the natural furnace cauldron." The girl's temperament suddenly changed drastically, her voice changed from pure to seductive, and there was an inexplicable aura of charm. Musian did not directly call the will of heaven to taboo, but squatted down slightly and looked gently into Muji's eyes. "Jir, do you like me?" Jir. Muji's charming smile just now faltered, and her pretty face turned red. She turned her head with some dodge in her eyes and whispered, "You, what are you talking about all of a sudden?" "Do you like it?" Musian asked again. "Of course I like it." The girl lowered her head subconsciously, even forgetting to continue to rewrite the taboo rules, and whispered, "Why do you suddenly ask this?" "I like you too." Musian continued, "That's why I want to leave the forbidden land of life." "Because I like her, I want to leave her?" Muji glanced at the young man subconsciously and heard him continue, "You should also know that the past relationship between you and me was blocked by heaven. I want to find the time when I was with you. That memory of that time." In the cool morning light, Muzian looked at this slender and beautiful figure, stretched out his hand and gently placed his hand on Muji's frail shoulders, which were as white jade. I don't want to just hear about our past experiences from your mouth. I hope to create more memories with you in the future, but I also don't want the past memories to be blocked. This body looks extremely petite, as if it can be crushed with a gentle touch. Who would have thought that this girl who looks so delicate could be an ancient creature from a forbidden place? At this moment, under Muzian's gentle words, Muji's attitude no longer seemed as firm as it was at the beginning. No matter how smart Muji is, she still has little experience in the world. In addition, these words were spoken by her favorite brother. Muji was naturally a little touched at this moment. She pursed her lips and peered into Muzian's sincere expression with her slightly moist beautiful eyes. After a while, she silently raised her hand and put away the power of rules that originally shrouded the forbidden area of life. Then it's agreed that you will come back to me after this. If you don't come, I will personally go and kidnap you back, Muji said in a low voice. Muzian lowered his head and glanced at her shy face, thinking that although this girl always liked to tease people, she seemed to be shy easily. Okay, it's a deal, Muzian smiled. Soon after returning to the palace of the forbidden land of life with Muji, Muwanj came out from the back of the palace. She obviously felt sorry for Muji because of what happened last night, so much so that when she looked at the child, there was a bit of apology in her eyes. She obviously didn't want to compete with Jir for a man, but unexpectedly, Muzian actually said something like confession to her yesterday. And in order to make Muzian trust her, she actually took the initiative to kiss him, so that Muzian could confirm that she was indeed the incarnation of concubine Shangyan. Just when she thought of this, Muwanj felt a complex emotion in her heart, especially when she saw Muji. She felt extremely guilty. Just at this moment, Muzian looked up and locked eyes with her. Almost at that moment, Muwanj retracted her gaze as if she was electrocuted, and the beautiful face under the veil seemed to be stained with a faint blush. Thinking of the last action she took towards him last night, she felt even more ashamed. In fact, I am also one of Shang Yanfei's clones, so even if I get a little intimate with him, it seems nothing, right? As soon as this thought came to Muwanji's mind, she couldn't help but be shocked by this sudden thought. No. Wouldn't it be too unfair to Jir? Calm down, Muwanji subconsciously grasped the hem of her skirt, trying to maintain her gentle temperament as much as possible. What's wrong with you? Why are you absent-minded today? Muji looked at this beautiful mature woman who had been absent-minded from the beginning, and asked in confusion. Those clear and transparent eyes seemed to be free of any impurities, and were full of concern. And such eyes made Muwanji feel ashamed. She looked at Muzian with a guilty look, and smiled naturally. Nothing, Muir went out with you to relax early this morning. I guess I have already made everything clear to you, right? Muji nodded obediently and stopped talking. She didn't want to let Muzian's confession to be exposed for the time being. When she gets married to Muzian, she will give her a big surprise. Hey, the girl looked at the gentle young woman in front of her and thought happily. Muwanj naturally didn't know what this quirky girl was thinking. She just looked at Muzian and said softly, let's go. I'll take you to see Lan Shiwei now. But there was a little more resentment in Muwanj's eyes. It was all because of his sudden visit last night, otherwise so many things wouldn't have happened, messing up her Tao heart. Muzian naturally noticed the woman's resentful look, so he had to cough lightly and pretend to appreciate the scenery around. In fact, this was really a mistake. He originally just wanted to prove his guess, but who knew that Muwanj would be forced to panic and take the initiative to let him feel the spiritual energy to prove that he was indeed someone's clone. For now, I can only hide this matter deep in my heart for the time being. According to the information revealed by Muwanji before, it is not difficult to infer that behind the sect masters shielding the secrets of heaven, there is actually the shadow of the ancestor of the Blue Clan. Although Musian did not know what role this ancestor of the Blue Clan played in shielding the secrets of heaven, he thought that as long as he met her, he would know the answer. Where did the ancient ship in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan come from? At this moment, when Musian stepped into the ancestral land of the Blue Clan, he finally couldn't help but speak. After hearing this, Yao Meng's eyes also looked at the woman who had brought up Musian. Since she met Mu Wanji before, she had an inexplicable sense of familiarity, but she couldn't tell where this familiarity came from for a while. Mu Wanji said in a gentle tone, "That is a painting boat that went upstream from the heaven along the long river of history, and it is also a miracle left by the original God." Musian has heard the name of heaven more than once. It is the source of the Sabbath, and it is also a void where creatures can hardly survive. It can even be said to be a dead place. But why did the miracle left by the original God fall into Lan Shiwei's hands? Musian was still confused, and was about to continue asking, but found that Mu Wanj stopped when she was about to step into the depths of the ancestral land. "What's wrong?" Musian asked in confusion. Before Mu Wanj could speak, Yao Meng seemed to have noticed something, and reached out to pick up a piece of bamboo slip that seemed to float out of the void. After a glance, she handed the bamboo slip to Musian and said faintly, "She wants to see you alone." So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 580. She wants to see me alone? If it weren't for the fact that the ancestor of the Blue Clan was a serious master, Musian might have thought that the other party wanted to try the natural furnace of the Ascension realm after he realized the Tao. Although he has not yet comprehended the rhyme of Taoism, Musian has indeed reached the realm of Taoism. Musian pondered for a moment and said, "Then I will go in to see her first." Mu Wanj nodded gently, and then reminded, "Remember to protect your own body first. That ancient ship is full of powerful and illusory spiritual consciousness. It doesn't even have a body. I still need to protect my body?" Musian looked at Mu Wanj's gentle and charming face and the tenderness between her eyebrows, and finally nodded slightly. Then, for no reason, he thought of his conversation with Mu Wanj last night, and his eyes couldn't help but linger on the woman's face for a moment. Mu Wanj was also looking at the young man, apparently thinking about going together with Musian. She trembled in her heart and said softly, You go, Kingdi and I are here, you don't have to worry about anyone coming in and disturbing us." Yao Meng's beautiful eyes flickered slightly, and her gaze swept over the two of them without leaving a trace, with a somewhat meaningful look in her eyes. Seeing Musian turn around and head towards the abyss of the ancestral land, her spiritual consciousness was quietly locked on the beautiful and charming mature woman next to her. Mu Wanj stared tenderly at the direction where Musian disappeared. "Qing Emperor, what can you do?" Before, in the Liangyi sect, when he said he would take me to meet my parents, I was shocked. Yao Meng spoke softly. "At that time, I have been wondering why such an outstanding child has grown up in Tianqian City in the past 10 years without any revelations about him. It's news like God's chosen one." Mu Wanj said calmly, "Didn't I hear in the past that the child had fallen for a period of time when he was in Tianqian City? It was only later that he woke up and started to practice hard. Then after he worked hard to practice, his luck began to gradually become stronger. Although he did not harvest any heavenly and earthly treasures, he was always able to inadvertently get to know all kinds of powerful people. He was even able to is it possible to obtain that powerful Taoist skill in some way." There was a smile on Yao Meng's cold face. "Gong Lianyu's sword immortal body, Ye Lingxuan's natural spiritual body, and even my natural Tao fetus, he should have copied them for his own use in some way, right?" Having been with Musian for so long, Yao Meng could more or less notice the abnormality in Musian's physique even without seeing his personal interface. What's more, when he went to the restricted area to test his physical fitness, the result he got was a chaotic body. And this chaotic body includes many powerful physiques including Yao Meng. Mu Wanj remained silent and said nothing. She said too much and made many mistakes. Kingdi was too smart. She was worried that if she continued to chat, the other party would notice more secrets. However, even so, Yao Meng still thought of himself and said, "So I was thinking before, whether he could transform the physiques of people close to him for his own use, only later because of one person, I gave up temporarily this doubt." She stared at Mu Wanz's beautiful side face and whispered, "Among the people he knows, there are 4 people whose physiques he has not been able to copy. Of course there is no need to say more about Ling Long and the princess. The Dao has already surpassed all things in the world. In addition, there are 2 people's physiques. I still haven't figured it out yet." Wei Men grew. When Yao Meng said this name, Mu Wanz's eyes changed slightly. "And concubine Shang Yan," she said again. Mu Wanz's eyes flashed slightly, and she finally couldn't help turning her head to look at Yao Meng, trying to see something in Kingdi's eyes. "It's just that this woman's temperament is too soft, and her watery peach blossom eyes are also too weak and innocent." When she stared straight at Yao Meng, she was the first to look away with some embarrassment. Yao Meng looked at Mu Wanz's veiled face. Her face was round and somewhat similar to Ling Long, but the latter was more innocent and cute, always looking at you innocently with a pair of unadulterated red eyes. Mu Wanz is a reserved, beautiful, and mature type, with peach blossom eyes that look gentle to everyone. Seeing Yao Meng staring at her without speaking, Mu Wanz sighed softly, "Why does Mu'er always like to be close to such a smart woman? As long as a woman is beautiful, being too smart is not a good thing, at least for Muzian. Being close to too many smart women is not a good thing." He thought he was very smart and was raising fish, but he didn't know who was raising whom. Maybe one day when Muzian was feeding the fish, he would be swallowed by a big shark in the fish pond. "You are not his parents, are you?" Yao Meng said with a smile. Before meeting Mu Vung, she couldn't be sure, but after meeting Mu Vung, it was not difficult to know whether he and Mu Vung were connected by blood. Mu Wanz's eyes changed slightly. "It doesn't matter whether he is or not, no matter what, I just treat him as a child." "You treat him like a child, does concubine Shang Yan do the same?" Yao Meng snorted, "She also thinks that my husband is a child. If so, I would be relieved." Mu Wanz's eyes flashed slightly, and she looked away unconsciously. Why did you suddenly mention sect leader Shang?" Yao Meng looked at Mu Wanz with a half smile. Her eyes seemed to say, "Why do you mention the Shang sect master? Don't you know more about it than me?" The Qing emperor is indeed doubting his identity. Mu Wanz's heart trembled. "You should know, or at least someone related to Shang Yanfei," Yao Meng asked expressionlessly. Yao Meng had been puzzled before, why Shang Yanfei would be so good to Muzian, a new disciple of the sect, for no reason. At first she didn't doubt it, but as she stayed in Muzian's body for a long time, she found that behind everything Muzian experienced, there seemed to be the shadow of the sect master. "I guess my meeting with Mu Lang was not a coincidence, right?" Mu Wanz raised her eyebrows slightly and said softly, "Do you think she deliberately arranged for you to meet Mu'er?" "Isn't it?" Yao Meng's eyes were still gentle, but her aura was suddenly locked on Mu Wanz. Shang Yanfei has long known that Mu Lang can use some ability to obtain part of other people's physical fitness for his own use, so she secretly arranged for him to approach the pilgrimage temple unintentionally and rescue my spiritual consciousness, Yao Meng said softly. "Mu Wanz, if you want to get the answer you want from me, I can only say sorry, the memory of the original body will not be shared with the clone, so I don't know much about what she did in the past." She continued, "Then what? What is the plan of the Qing Emperor after knowing this? Ask her if she is going to do something earth-shattering, or leave Mu'er." Yao Meng glanced at Mu Wanz and said calmly, "I don't know what Shang Yanfei's purpose is, and I am not interested in knowing what love and hate entanglement she had with Muzian in the past. But in this life, he will only be mine." Mu Wanz heard this and couldn't help but smile softly. The reaction of the Qing emperor after learning the truth was just as Shang Yanfei had expected. After all, Shang Yanfei was the villain in all the plans, and Musian was unaware of it. Although Musian saved Yao Meng partly because he was attracted by her beauty, it was not a deduction for Yao Meng. There are many people in the world who fall in love with King Di just for his appearance, and Musian is just one of them. It's just that this child is more explicit and more sincere. It's good that you can understand. No matter what, Muir is sincere to you, Mu Wanj said softly. I know, Yao Meng smiled. Even so, the feeling of being calculated by others is still very unpleasant. Yao Meng narrowed her eyes, and her fairy voice, as crisp as a silver bell, was a little playful. By the way, when you and I are talking, can she also notice it? Mu Wanj hesitated a little, but nodded gently under Yao Meng's gaze. She can now hear, and even see everything the clone sees, Mu Wanji said. Do you have anything to say to her? Yao Meng said softly, and said to herself, when I was in Lianji sect before, my husband said that he would take us to meet his parents. At that time, I was a little nervous. After all, if his parents are young cultivators with a lifespan of less than a few thousand years, it is always a bit strange to call them parents. But I didn't expect that he actually has no parents. At this time, she suddenly paused and continued casually, but it can be seen that your husband still respects you very much, right? If it was before last night, facing Yao Meng's question, Mu Wanji could still nod very affirmatively. However, thinking of the various scenes when talking with him last night, the woman's eyes couldn't help but become more complicated. Well, I guess so. After a while, Mu Wanji showed a faint smile. If that's the case, then you should be considered his most trusted elder. Under Mu Wanji's gentle gaze, Yao Meng smiled and bowed, saying softly, Mother, your wife greets you. Mu Wanji's smile froze. In the depths of Lianji Peak, Shang Yanfei looked at the bronze mirror in her hand with a little surprise, turned it over silently, and gently patted it on the table. It seems that I haven't seen senior sister and sister Fei Ying for a while. The last time I pampered them seemed to be the last time. At this moment, Musian was walking in this ancient ship left by the original mother goddess. Seeing this ancient ship of the Blue Clan, he thought of the cold little white dress and the charming Cheongsam Queen for no reason. I wonder if they are still practicing in Lianji sect now. The ancient ship was full of all kinds of bamboo slips floating from the void, broken scriptures, and other strange items. Musian even saw words that did not belong to Zhu in this life. They were very complicated and he could not understand what was written on them. You came a little early, Musian. At this moment, a cold and pleasant voice sounded deep in Musian's heart. In the ancient ship, a space crack was torn out of thin air. In the crack, a tall and slender figure could be vaguely seen. The ancestor of the Lan clan was also the Ice Queen in Zhu in the past. You said that, which means you know that I will come to see you in the future, right? Musian asked his inner confusion. Lan Shiwei nodded gently. I knew you would come to see me, but I didn't expect that Mu Wanji would bring you here. She walked slowly out of the crack in the void, and every step seemed to be accompanied by ice air spreading outward. Lan Shiwei stared at Musian, and after a while, she said again, that's it, have you already reached the Taoist realm? The speed of cultivation is much faster than I imagined. It's just that this junior is lucky and happened to encounter some opportunities. Otherwise, it would not have been possible to advance to enlightenment in such a short period of time. Musian was very modest. Yes, I know. It must be because the medicine king of Yuzhou got you, right? Lan Shiwei nodded slightly and said calmly. Musian. Although he knew that this woman was not teasing him intentionally, why did this sound so weird? What did you mean when you said I came a while ago? Musian asked. The second arc has not yet been launched. Even if you come now, you will not be able to see its original posture, Lan Shiwei said calmly. What is the second arc? A trace of doubt flashed in Muzian's heart, and he subconsciously said, "Are you talking about the ancient ship under my feet? Is it the second ark?" It is rumored that in the early days, the second ark was originally a gift from the lover of the original mother goddess. At first it was just a palm-sized paper boat. Later, the paper boat that passed through her hands became a miracle left by the original mother goddess in the world. One Lan Shiwei said. "What is the function of the second ark?" "There seem to be many dead souls of ancient powerful beings in this ark," Muzian asked. Lan Shiwei's beautiful eyes stared quietly into Muzian's eyes, and said softly, "Do you believe in reincarnation, little friend?" Muzian hesitated for a moment and nodded slightly. He himself had seen the reborn person, and it was impossible for him to believe it no matter how much he didn't believe it at this moment. Those who believe in the afterlife can use the second ark to store their spiritual consciousness even after it is destroyed. However, these fallen powers only have a trace of remaining will, Lan Shiwei said with a smile. "Then you too?" Muzian asked. Lan Shiwei, "I don't count. At least I still have my own spiritual consciousness. If I am willing, it is not impossible to reshape my body in the future." So, the ancestors of the Blue Clan were waiting for an opportunity to reshape their bodies, so they stayed in the second ark? Muzian's mind flickered with thoughts. Lan Shiwei continued, "In fact, if the powerful ones in the second ark are willing, they can leave here and be reincarnated at any time. However, some of them still have unfulfilled wishes during their lifetime, and some do not want to practice again. If you want to step into the Hedeo realm, you need not only talent, but also an opportunity. It doesn't mean that you can succeed the second time after you have Hedeo once in your previous life." Muzian can understand this. A rough metaphor is that Muzian finally fattened up all the fish in the fish pond and raised them up, so that he can let them go and live a happy life of eating soft food. If he were suddenly asked to reincarnate and start over again at this time, he would definitely not be able to bear it. Muzian calmed down his thoughts slightly. "So according to what you mean, the second ark has not been activated yet, so you can't tell me why the sect master went to great lengths to shield Tianji and even sent me to Tianqian city." Lan Shiwei nodded silently. "This is my oath. Mu Wanj sent you to see me, probably not to make me break my oath." She walked to the ancient ship, bent down and picked up a black paper crane floating in the river outside the ancient ship. "What's this?" Muzian frowned slightly. He always felt that this paper crane seemed a bit familiar, so his eyes couldn't help but stay on the paper crane in Lan Shiwei's hand for a long time. Then, Muzian's eyes widened a bit, as if he remembered something important, and a thought came to his mind: heaven. Yes, he had seen similar paper cranes when he was in the Tiangong deep in the heaven. He still remembered that there was a sealed door in the deepest part of the palace. Until now he didn't know what was behind that door. "Open it and take a look," Lan Shiwei said with a smile. Muzian took the black paper crane and opened it gently. Among the paper cranes are two brilliant golden characters. Enlightenment. Boom. The two characters in the paper crane seemed to have some kind of magic power. It was like a bolt of lightning struck in Muzian's mind, like a beam of light opening the door that was originally closed. The last hurdle between them completely dissipated. Different from Lin Ling's words, the two characters in the paper crane involve cause and effect, and are more like creating something out of nothing. It was obvious that Muzian had not yet figured out how to follow his own path and how to gain enlightenment, but when he just saw these two words, his heart suddenly became enlightened, as if someone had opened a lock in his head. This is no longer within the scope of monks' Taoism, because it can create everything that was originally nothing. This is the magical power of the owner of the paper crane, the magical power of creation. The will of heaven has said before that because Muzian did not believe in the three ways of heaven, earth, and man, nor the great Dao, and did not respect the new way of heaven, he never understood the rhyme of the Dao. Muzian has only believed in himself since he was born. The previous Muzian walked into a dead end and got into trouble, always thinking that since he didn't believe in any Tao, he needed to create the Tao himself. But it doesn't really need to be done. He had been in the will of heaven, and had the blessing of the new heaven in the dark. In the past, he had indirectly entered and exited the great Dao several times through the princess, heaven, the new heaven, and even the great Dao. He had close contact. No one in the world knows them better than Musian. So, he had to understand 3 different ways, just like the way he took when he became a cultivator in the past. Build a fish pond and raise fish. Of course, to understand the Dao in this way, it is necessary to agree with heaven, the new heaven, and the great Dao. Lan Shiwei's cold eyes changed almost as soon as she noticed Musian's movements. She didn't know the content of the paper crane before, but when she saw Musian's state at this moment, she knew that the paper crane was a means to help him resonate with the Dao. Is this heaven? Lan Shiwei saw a white light suddenly lit up in the dark, with a little surprise in her eyes, staring at Musian. He clearly knew that the heavenly Dao was in trouble, but he still chose to realize the Dao like most of the cultivators in Zhuzhou. Although the heavenly Dao is strong, if you resonate with it, it means that you may be dominated by it in the future. Acknowledge the will of the heavenly Dao. In the void, a cold voice without any impurities sounded silently. Above the ancient ship, a soft white light quietly lit up. In the white light, it seemed that a graceful figure could be vaguely seen. She stared at Musian on the ancient ship indifferently. Then, without anyone noticing, she licked her lips subconsciously. After the master comprehended the Dao rhyme, the taste must be sweeter, right? I really want to taste it sooner, Miss Tiandao thought silently in her heart. She is the agent of the heavenly Dao in the human world. Any cultivator who realizes the Dao is recognized by her. Musian wants to resonate with her, so Miss Tiandao is of course very happy. Just because of her own setting, she must maintain a high and cold attitude and cannot go down to the mortal world casually. It's a pity. At the same time, in the heaven, a petite and exquisite silver-haired loli slowly opened her eyes and snorted coldly, "What a greedy guy, you are not satisfied even though you already have someone," she said faintly. Admit it, the new heavenly way. When she heard the second resonant sound coming from Musian's body, Lan Shiwei's always maintained coldness quietly melted, and looked at the boy in astonishment. He realized the truth twice. Ancestor, what happened in the outside world? Why is there such a big commotion? At this time, a cold voice suddenly sounded, and Lan Mulian, dressed in a gorgeous white dress, walked out from under the ancient ship. The moment she opened her mouth, her eyes subconsciously fell on the boy who was standing quietly on the ancient ship. Why is he here? Lan Shiwei had told the 2 sisters of the Lan clan that they needed to return to the ancestral land to study the fragments of scriptures every once in a while. Lan Murian has been back to the ancestral land for more than half a month and has been immersed in the many fragments of scriptures. But I didn't expect that my junior brother would also come to the ancestral land. And from the looks of it, he seems to be resonating with the Tao. Your junior brother has resonated with 2 different Taos. Lan Shiwei came back to his senses from the shock just now, and said calmly, he is really brave. Under normal circumstances, the heavenly Dao would never agree to this absurd way of enlightenment, allowing himself to coexist with another Tao rhyme. To put it bluntly, Tao and Tao are in an opposing relationship. After resonating with one Tao rhyme, the other Tao rhyme will no longer accept the cultivator. And the heavenly Dao is even more powerful. If it finds that someone has chosen to resonate with another Tao after resonating with it, it may directly send down a heavenly punishment and take back the heavenly Dao law he has realized. In a sense, the heavenly Dao is more like a sickly girl, with a great possessiveness. However, from just now to now, the heavenly Dao has not sent down any heavenly punishment. This means that the heavenly Dao will tacitly approve Musian's extremely greedy behavior. Could it be that the rules of the outside world have changed, and now the cultivators can choose two different ways of resonance and enlightenment. Even Lan Shiwei couldn't help but have a flash of doubt in his heart at this moment. What do you think of his talent, ancestor? Lan Murian suddenly asked. Lan Shiwei told her before that Musian's talent is indeed outstanding, but it is only outstanding. This made Lan Murian a little dissatisfied, but she just couldn't find a chance to refute. And now, it just happened to change the ancestor's impression of his junior brother. If she can deal with the ancestor, who in the Lan clan dares to object to her and her junior brother being together in the future? Lan Shiwei naturally didn't know what Lan Murian was thinking at the moment. She just looked at the boy silently and nodded slightly. Well, resonating with two ways at the same time, it is indeed a bit courageous. Even if she was extremely confident in the past, she had never resonated with two ways to realize the Tao. It is better to say that in this Jizhu, only 2 or 3 people have succeeded. Resonating with two Tao rhymes, when Musian merges with the Tao in the future, his strength will be much stronger than the great powers of the same realm. Becoming a Taoist partner with her two descendants is acceptable. Lan Shiwei was thinking about this, but suddenly heard a loud boom in her ears. She was slightly stunned, and then quickly reacted, and suddenly raised her head and looked up at the sky. Deep in the alien starry sky, a soft light quietly sprinkled Jizhu, like sunlight penetrating the dark clouds, quietly falling into the ancestral land of the Lan clan. Then, the light condensed into the figure of a woman. After a brief moment of astonishment, Lan Shiwei subconsciously said to herself, "The incarnation of the great Dao, how could he be here?" Then, as if she had thought of something, her eyes suddenly fixed on Musian. Not satisfied with resonating with two kinds of Dao, he actually wanted to play with the great Dao. The great Dao, it is above all things in the world. In the entire Jizhu, only the two daughters she gave birth to resonate with her. It's not that there are no other enlightened monks who have played with the great Dao, but they have never received a response from the great Dao. Lan Shiwei subconsciously took a half step forward, and the ice air quietly scattered along her feet. The incarnation of the great Dao appeared, probably because Musian alarmed her in some way, thus causing the punishment of the great Dao. No matter what, he must be saved. Admit it? The woman stared at Musian quietly, and her emotionless cold voice sounded, which also interrupted Lan Shiwei's thoughts. She looked at the illusory figure of the great Dao with some doubts, and then her eyes finally changed when she looked at Musian. The great Dao actually acknowledged his resonance. You know, Musian has already comprehended two different Daos, and the great Dao actually agreed. Neither Lan Shiwei nor Lan Murian knew that all this was a cause and effect cycle for the great Dao. Musian spared no effort to help Linglong and the princess ascend to heaven, and in return, the great Dao acknowledged this seemingly absurd way of enlightenment. 3 different Dao rhymes. If Musian in the future can combine Dao, his combat power is simply immeasurable. Not only that, if Musian, who has comprehended 3 Dao rhymes, gets close to it, he can also feel 3 different experiences through the natural furnace. Lan Murian raised her lips slightly, but her face remained cold and indifferent. She just asked calmly, "Ancestor, you should be satisfied with my performance this time, right?" Lan Shiwei stared at Musian for a long time, with a little brilliance in her eyes. After a while, she came back to her senses, looked at Lan Murian gently, and said softly, "Well, you are right, he is a very good child." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 581. One person resonates with 3 different Daos and then attains enlightenment. Even Lan Shiwei had never seen such a scene before. Even now, she still finds it hard to believe. Although she didn't know what was in the paper crane at first, she had already guessed it. Muzian's enlightenment was full of twists and turns. This matter had long been reported from the restricted area, and Lan Shiwei naturally knew about it. Because of this, she thought that the paper crane left by that person should be a preparation for Muzian's enlightenment. The result was just as she expected. But even so, seeing such a scene at this moment, it is still unavoidable. It is not strange to resonate with the heavenly Dao and attain enlightenment, but later he resonated with a Dao he had never seen before, and even finally got the recognition of the great Dao. This is a bit too outrageous. And the heavenly Dao has not yet brought down any heavenly punishment. This shows that the will of the heavenly Dao actually acquiesced to Muzian's half-hearted flirtatious behavior. Muzian slowly opened his eyes, bowed politely to Lan Shiwei, and said respectfully, "Thank you, Senior." After saying that, he noticed the little white dress next to Lan Shiwei, and his eyes couldn't help but have a little more surprise. "Senior's sister is here too." Lan Murian glanced at his junior brother. Why didn't his junior brother look happy to see her? Lan Murian's pretty face was slightly cold, and her voice was pleasant. "The ancestor said before that I should go to the ancestral land to read the scripture fragments every once in a while, so I just returned to the Lan clan with Fei Ying not long ago." No wonder, Muzian understood in his heart. Now that you have attained enlightenment, there are many forces in Zhu that are eyeing you, so try not to act alone to avoid being targeted by the Supreme in the Forbidden Land. Lan Shiwei reminded, although it is not good to say this, with your current strength of enlightenment, it is probably difficult to fight against the Supreme. Of course, in most cases, they will not let their bodies leave the Forbidden Land. The Forbidden Supreme is a powerful being that has existed since the beginning of time. After being washed by the long river of history, these Supremes have long lost their past bloodiness and are not willing to let their bodies be involved in dangerous situations. Lan Shiwei paused and said again, "But what I just said is the majority of cases. It is not ruled out that they may take action directly. Your existence itself is an attractive elixir, and it is an elixir that can be used without refining. Those forbidden places will either kill you at all costs, or take you to the forbidden places to help them practice. I think they will not hesitate to offend the human emperor of Yuhua realm for this." Lan Murian's eyes moved slightly, with a little disdain. Is he really so popular now? He then looked at his junior brother twice. From the outside, his junior brother did not change much at all, except that his facial features were more sharp and his temperament was more restrained and attractive. Other than that, there seemed to be nothing special. Lan Shiwei said quietly, "He just comprehended 3 different Dao rhymes. With the existence of the Tiansheng furnace, people who are close to him can experience the Dao rhymes he comprehended, although it is impossible to fully comprehend these 3 Daos in 1 or 2 times. If time passes, it will be completely different. Even if the 3 Dao rhymes are not mentioned, the Tiansheng furnace of the Yuhua realm alone is enough to attract most of the female cultivators in Zhu. So the Taboo Supreme is eyeing this guy?" Lan Murian secretly looked at Muzian for a few times, and then she suddenly realized that this beautiful ancestor was staring at Muzian silently. She couldn't help but think slightly, and subconsciously said, "Could it be that the ancestor also?" During this period, Lan Shiwei can be said to have generously helped the 2 sisters too much. Even her father respected this ancestor very much. If the ancestor really had this idea for his junior brother, Lan Murian simply didn't dare to think about it. Imagine if one day Lan Murian and the ancestor she respected were in the same bed. It's so shameful to think about it. Lan Shiwei showed a faint smile on his face and said softly, "Lianer, no matter what, I will not do such a despicable thing as snatching a man from my descendants, so you don't have to worry." Lan Murian's delicate face like ice and snow suddenly turned red. With a bit of resentment, she glanced at Muzian and said lightly, "Ancestor thinks too much. He is just my junior brother, we are not Taoist couples." Lan Murian has said this countless times from the past to the present. In fact, Lan Murian was right to say that. Muzian had never confessed to Lan Murian. Even when they had physical contact later, it was a natural thing and there was no confession. Since there was no confession, how could there be a Taoist couple? Oh! Lan Shiwei's eyes moved slightly, and he looked at Lan Murian and Musian inadvertently for a few times, and whispered, "Aren't you a Taoist couple?" Senior sister's mouth is really hard, but she is soft when kissing. Musian raised his hand and bowed, saying, to reply to the senior, "I have never found a suitable opportunity to confess to senior sister before." He paused slightly and continued, "But senior sister's great kindness in the past, Mu has always remembered it in my heart, and I wish I could repay you with my body." Lan Murian was thin-skinned, and when she heard this, her cold face couldn't help but be stained with a faint blush. Said such words in front of the ancestors, how could there be such a shameless person? Lan Murian actually had complicated feelings towards Musian. It was impossible to say that he didn't like his junior brother. It was just that he and Bairuoxi were Taoist partners and married men. As someone who grew up under the teachings of his master Shang Yanfei, his senior sister had a strong moral bottom line. Unlike Musian, who was fickle and had a heart divided into several parts, raising fish that were more dangerous than each other. He was almost dragged down by the fish in his own pond several times. Musian looked up at the two of them, thought for a while, and continued, "Junior is also interested in the fragments here, so I would like to ask if you can stay here for a few days." Lan Shiwei was surprised at first, and then he smiled and nodded, "Of course it's okay. I will explain to Qingdi and Mu Wanj in a while, so you don't have to worry." After all, Musian was only staying in the ancient ship for a few days. For a cultivator, a few days is just a meditation. Musian walked down the deck of the ancient ship. From time to time, he could see fragments of scriptures floating out of the void on both sides, and even some bamboo slips. The texts on them were very old, and he couldn't understand many of them at all. He looked up at the beauty in white skirt walking not far ahead. In the dim staircase, her dress was still bright and beautiful, and her long legs and thin waist were even more eye-catching. Even Musian, who had seen many beauties, could not help but secretly admire the graceful figure of the senior sister at this moment, especially a pair of tight and plump legs, white, crystal and elastic. And the pair of white boots under her feet added a bit of holiness. I just don't know if she is wearing white stockings today. If so, it would be more perfect. Why are you staring at me? Lan Mulian suddenly frowned slightly, and realized that the boy behind her was looking at her straight. I just thought that senior sister was very beautiful in the past. Now it seems that she has a more mature charm than before, Musian praised. Lan Mulian frowned and said lightly, "Junior brother, I think you will say this once when you meet a woman? If you see Fei Ying later, will you say it to her again?" Musian quickened his pace and kept up with Lan Mulian's pace. He tilted his head and smiled at senior sister. Her pure white dress today seemed a little shorter. The hem of the skirt covered her thighs and exposed her knees. The white boots just covered her calves. Her full chest supported the fabric, and her long hair fell to her light waist. In an instant, Musian couldn't help but think of lilies and white orchids, pure and noble flowers. I won't deliberately agree with others, so just now it was just a sincere compliment. Musian reached out and quietly held Lan Mulian's little hand, and the slightly cool and soft touch filled his warm palm. The interior of the ancient ship was already dark, but it was the best cover at this moment. Lan Murian's body stiffened slightly, and then she slowly relaxed, letting Musian hold her hand and walk down the stairs. Looking around at the fragments of bamboo slips that were occasionally swept out of the ancient ship, Musian suddenly reached out and grabbed one and glanced at it, frowning slightly, and said, "Many of these fragments seem to be left behind by a certain dynasty, and many of the words are different from this life. Can you understand them, senior sister?" Lan Murian came back to her senses, letting Musian play with her little hand, and said lightly, "It's not a difficult task for me." The tone was nonchalant, but if Musian measured her heartbeat at this time, it would not be difficult to know that the heartbeat of this top genius girl in Jiuzhu had accelerated to the point that it seemed to be about to jump out at any time. The heavenly destiny body can see through the origin of all things. It is very easy to see through a fragment of a scripture. Lan Mulian paused for a moment and continued, "It is Feiying, I don't know how she can understand these fragments. Sister Feiying is the system holder, the chosen one chosen by the heavenly Dao. Maybe she exchanged some translations from the system," Musian thought to himself. Senior sister always says that the heavenly destiny body can see through the origin of all things. How does it do it? Musian suddenly asked curiously. In fact, this has already involved the secrets of the heavenly destiny body, and even its weaknesses. Under normal circumstances, it is best not to tell even sisters to avoid the enemy finding the weaknesses of the heavenly destiny body in the future. But after noticing Musian's sincere expression, Lan Murian said softly after a brief silence, "Usually, people observe a person with their eyes, but the heavenly destiny saint body uses qi to see through the origin. After pulling the qi out of the body, you can lock onto something in an instant. As long as the realm is not too much higher than yours, the heavenly destiny saint body will see through its most original origin for you." Lan Murian looked at Musian curiously, and then the gentleness between his eyebrows gradually frowned. Suddenly, he shook off Musian's hand and sneered, "Junior brother, there is still the spiritual energy of your maid in your body. I'm afraid you were still pampering your maid the night before coming to the ancestral land. You've worked so hard." "Senior sister." Musian showed an awkward but polite smile. He never expected that a question he asked casually could actually pit himself to death. "Wait a minute, senior sister, can you help me translate these fragments? Some of these fragments involve some unknown secrets of the past, while others are broken skills and even formations left by great powers in the early days. This is also the reason why Musian proposed to stay in the ancient ship for a few days. Your chaotic body also has some characteristics of the heavenly destiny body. After pulling out the qi, it is not difficult to read these fragments." Lan Mulian smiled and said, "Junior brother, you should read it slowly by yourself." Looking at Lan Mulian walking straight down the stairs, Musian stretched his hand forward weakly, but finally let it go weakly. Alas, the physique of the heavenly destiny body is too outrageous. It means that no matter which woman he gets close to in the future, Lan Mulian can instantly detect who is close to Musian as long as she wants. But fortunately, with Lan Mulian's explanation just now, Musian also knows how to use the heavenly destiny body's seeing through the origin technique. He reached out and casually grabbed a bamboo slip that floated by, then pulled the qi out of his body and covered it on the bamboo slip in an instant. In an instant, he only felt that the originally obscure words on it were perfectly imprinted in his mind with the words of this life at that moment. This is a record of the process of a dynasty in Dongzhou from prosperity to decline 5,000 years ago, and in it, Musian saw a very familiar name, the Body of Doom. In the past, Musian had always thought that the Body of Doom was actually the result of being punished by the heaven, but almost every dynasty would have a Body of Doom before it collapsed. Is this a coincidence? Also, is the Body of Doom punished by the heaven still alive? Musian was full of curiosity. His eyes swept over the bamboo slips one by one, and soon reached out to grab another bamboo slip. It was also the story of the collapse of a dynasty in Dongzhou, and the same Body of Doom. The records in it were obscure and difficult to understand, but after being peeked through by the holy Body of Destiny, it was easy to understand the content. Next, Musian spent nearly 3 days reading these bamboo slips, and the more he read, the more frightened he became. Although the more time goes by, the fewer records about the dynasty collapse in the bamboo slips, but there is one thing in the records that is consistent: every time the Body of Doom descends, there will often be strange phenomena in the sky, and a soft white light will cover the entire Kyushu. The record is vague, but Musian knows what this white light means. Heavenly Dao. Often every time the white light disappears, Kyushu will be devastated. Because according to the records in the history books, after the Heavenly Dao leaves, the Supreme of the Nine Forbidden Lands will try to cover the entire Kyushu with the taboo rules again. Even the Heavenly Dao cannot manifest its true body at will, so he will let the Heavenly Daos will execute the rules of heaven and earth on his behalf. But the Heavenly Dao took advantage of the loopholes in the rules of heaven and earth. He could not descend directly, but he could descend to Kyushu while punishing the body of doom and give more permissions to the Nine Forbidden Lands. Musian made a guess in his heart. If so, it means that the Heavenly Dao cannot give all the permissions to the Forbidden Land at once, so it has to wait for the appearance of the body of doom and take this opportunity to make the Nine Forbidden Lands stronger. The ultimate goal of the Heavenly Dao is to let the taboo rules control the entire Jizhu. This taboo rule is actually the rule set by the Heavenly Dao itself. But I am afraid that the Heavenly Dao would not have thought that every time the Forbidden Supreme became stronger and tried to absorb the dynasty's luck and release the taboo rules, it was suppressed by the leader of the Lianji sect. These data are not enough. I need to know whether the body of doom refers to a single person, or whether there will be a different unlucky guy in every life, which is used as an excuse for the Heavenly Dao to use the loopholes in the rules to come. Musian silently put the bamboo slips back into the void. He has been here for nearly 3 days, and he has basically checked everything he can about the body of doom and the Heavenly Dao. But there is still a place he has not been to. Dagan Dynasty. Although Dagan was only a dynasty of one generation, it contained historical records of the fall of dynasties. Maybe I should go see Princess Yongning. After Princess Yongning returned to the Dagan dynasty, the old emperor seemed very satisfied with her performance and gave her many awards. I wonder how she is doing now, Musian thought to himself. Musian stood up and stretched his waist. Did you find what you want? At this time, a cold and lazy voice suddenly sounded. Musian turned his head and looked. The ancestor of the Lan clan, whose body seemed a little illusory, was leaning against the door with his hands on his chest, looking quietly into the door. Lan Shiwei was wearing an ice blue long skirt that seemed to be made of ice crystals, covering her slender legs. She was barefoot, and her body seemed to be suspended in the air. The white jade feet seemed to emit a faint ice blue coldness. Musian nodded slightly, then he looked around in confusion and asked, "Don't senior sister and sister Feiying usually read the fragments of scriptures here?" He stayed here for 3 full days, but he didn't see senior sister and sister Feiying at all. I originally thought that maybe I could unlock the library sisters CG this time, but it seems unlikely. Musian felt a little regretful. Lan Shiwei's eyes flashed slightly, and she opened her red lips and said, "I asked them to go to another cabin to concentrate on practicing, and avoid disturbing you. No wonder I haven't seen them in these 3 days," Musian showed a thoughtful look. "What are your plans next?" Lan Shiwei asked in a gentle voice. Musian thought for a while and said, "I want to go to the Dagan dynasty to see if I can find all the records about the fall of the dynasty in the past." Lan Shiwei nodded slightly, and then suddenly asked casually, "I accidentally heard Feiying mention that before you met King Di, you already had a Taoist partner, right?" Musian coughed lightly and said, "I did have a Taoist partner before I met King Di's sister. Speaking of which, King Di's sister and I were not Taoist partners at the beginning, but we gradually got to know each other after experiencing some things later." Knowing that Musian said this to try to save his image, Lan Shiwei did not expose it, but smiled and nodded. "I know, I heard some of those 2 children in the past. How much do the senior sisters trust this beautiful ancestor of the Lan clan? Why do they tell her everything?" Musian said respectfully, "Thank you for your help this time, I have nothing to repay you, if you need it in the future dash." Before he finished speaking, Lan Shiwei tilted his head slightly and looked at him with interest. "What if I want your reward now?" So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 582. There was no sound in the ancient ship. When Musian heard Lan Shiwei suddenly say making things difficult, he was a little confused for a moment. He didn't know how to respond more appropriately. Originally, Musian was just saying polite words, but unexpectedly, this beautiful ancestor of the Blue Tribe suddenly said this. "What's wrong? You seem surprised." Lan Shiwei put her hands on her chest, with a slight smile in her beautiful eyes. She looked at Musian with a smile and said, "Or did you not expect that I would ask you for payment in the first place?" There was a bit of ridicule in the words. Musian pondered for a while. This junior has just been promoted to enlightenment, and his strength is meager. There is indeed a limit to what I can do to help you. But as long as the seniors give instructions, the juniors will do their best no matter what, he added again. Musian thought very clearly that since the other party was the ancestor of his senior sister and sister Fei Ying, and he was suspected of having some cooperation with the elder sister, it was impossible to deliberately make things difficult for a junior like him. What's more, this time the other party allowed him to stay in this ancient ship as an outsider, and also allowed him to view the many fragments of scriptures left in the ancient ship. This alone was a great kindness. Lan Shiwei pondered Musian's words and asked casually, "Are you really trying your best?" "As long as it's something I can do, even if it's a job like a cow or a horse, I will definitely try my best to satisfy my senior." Musian sounded a bit serious this time and looked at Lan Shiwei with a sincere look. It can be seen that this child is indeed serious. Although he does not have the ability to read minds, Lan Shiwei has met too many juniors in the past. It is not difficult to judge whether a person is lying just by his eyes and tone of voice. It's just that the other party was so sincere, it actually made her a little embarrassed. Although the natural furnace cauldron is indeed hard to refuse, if she can practice dual cultivation with him, it will be a great nourishment for her spiritual consciousness that has not been bathed in spiritual energy for a long time. But this child is the Taoist companion of Fei Ying and Mu Lian. Those two descendants of the Blue Clan trusted and respected her so much. If they knew what she was doing today in the future, would they still respect her ancestor as they did in the past? Looking at the sincere young man, Lan Shiwei felt complicated for a moment. And it is not difficult to see from Musian's performance that he, like the sisters, respects her from the bottom of his heart. If she said those words now, Lan Shiwei pursed her red lips slightly, stared at the young man, but remained silent. If Lan Shiwei wanted to seduce a boy who was less than 20, wouldn't it be easy for him? But if he does this, even if the other party really agrees, Lan Shiwei feels that he will not be able to pass the test in his heart in the future. Even if she changes her mind, even if she can convince herself later and even be sure to take down the child, what should she do when facing Fei Ying and Mu Lian? You call me ancestor, I call you sister, and everyone calls each other his own. Both Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying got close to Musian earlier than Lan Shiwei. From this point of view, Lan Shiwei, who came in a little later, would naturally call them sisters. Imagine that in the future, Lan Shiwei regains his life with the help of Musian and leaves the second arc. If he meets a member of the Lan tribe at this time, Lan Shiwei will have to care about that in front of his descendants. Two superb sisters are called sisters. What kind of shameful picture is this that tortures people's mentality? Just thinking about that scene makes Lan Shiwei feel extremely complicated. After all, it was not appropriate for her as an elder to compete with her descendants for men. After a brief silence, Lan Shiwei let out a faint breath and said calmly, "It was just a joke, don't take it seriously. No matter what, I won't embarrass you, a junior." There seemed to be a bit more softness in the cold voice, and the eyes looking at Musian didn't seem as cold as at first. In any case, Lan Shiwei was very satisfied with Musian's attitude just now. This child was not a free prostitute. Musian's answer just now revealed infinite sincerity. He really wanted to help Lan Shiwei and his attitude was very sincere. And this also made Lan Shiwei very satisfied with the future son-in-law of the Lan clan. However, at this time, Musian frowned and said, "Juniors are not people who don't repay their kindness. If you need anything, just ask. You are the senior sister and their elders, and naturally you are also my elder. I will definitely do it. Do your best to fulfill your wishes." Lan Shiwei's eyes were a little gentler and she said softly, "I just wanted to test your character. I'm very pleased that you have such a heart. As long as you are in this second arc, no matter how weak your spiritual consciousness is, it will not disappear completely. This is due to the time matter in the second arc, which affects everything in the second arc all the time." Musian boldly stepped forward and grabbed Lan Shiwei's delicate hand, saying, "Senior, although I have just realized enlightenment, if your spiritual consciousness can enter the natural furnace, it can continuously nourish your spiritual consciousness. I just want to do my part to repair your damaged spiritual consciousness. Knowledge." The words were so sincere that Lan Shiwei's heart trembled slightly. She naturally understood what it meant to repair spiritual consciousness. What does Musian rely on to restore and nourish spiritual consciousness? Nature is a natural furnace. And now, in the Tiansheng furnace of Yahua realm, only the fox that enchants everyone is sleeping in it. The other position of the Tiansheng furnace is now empty. Are you serious? Lan Shiwei tried her best to maintain calmness, and stared at Musian's eyes with her beautiful eyes. "Once I tell Mu Lian and Fei Ying what you said today, your image in their hearts will completely collapse. You know, Musian's previous operation of raising fish had already made Lan Mu Lian and Lan Fei Ying's sisters quite unhappy. If they knew that Musian actually said this to the ancestors they respected, the consequences would be unimaginable." Musian shook his head gently and said seriously, "Even so, I don't want you to stay in this ancient ship forever." This is actually Musian's sincere words. In his opinion, if Lan Shiwei wanted, she could have asked the Lan clan to prepare the natural treasures of condensing spiritual consciousness and even the body for her in the past, but she just stayed in this second arc to fulfill a promise. For this reason, she didn't even care that the nine-tailed sky fox later replaced her as the priest. After that, she handed over her lifelong inheritance to the top sisters Lan Murian and Lan Fei Ying without reservation. But she left nothing behind. Lan Shiwei's eyes changed slightly. "You just meant to let my spiritual consciousness enter the natural furnace, or even, do you want to, me? Do you know what you said to your elders just now?" There was a bit of rebuke in her tone, but for some reason, her eyes were a little erratic. Musian looked shy and hesitant, but he still mustered up the courage, looked up at the ancestors of the Lan clan, and said, "I know what I said today is a bit disrespectful to you, but I really want to do something for you." "Because of the relationship between Murian and Fei Ying?" Lan Shiwei asked. "No." Musian shook his head and said seriously, "You have been guarding the second arc alone for an unknown period of time. Although I don't know what agreement you have with the sister of the clan leader, I know that your agreement is related to me. I don't want the people who care about me to live alone in this ancient ship. Even in the past, the people they worshipped at the ancestral worship meeting of the Blue Clan were the nine-tailed sky fox instead of you. I can't accept this kind of thing either." Lan Shiwei's eyes finally changed. Looking at Musian's eyes, she was a little absent-minded for a while. For so many years, who knows the loneliness of her guarding the empty ship alone? In the past, the Blue Clan worshipped the nine-tailed sky fox at the ancestral worship meeting, and she could actually understand it. But understanding does not mean that she will not be sad. After the integration, she brought her family to become the head of the ancient family, and all the clans worshipped her, but after her death, she didn't even have a descendant to worship and mourn. This is a great sorrow. In the end, the person who understood her the most was not the descendants of the Blue Clan, but an outsider who had nothing to do with the Blue Clan. At this time, a gentle voice sounded in my ears again, "In my heart, you have always been my respected elder. I respect you as much as my senior sisters do. So even if I restore your spiritual consciousness, we can still not be Taoist companions. Musian held a little hope in his eyes and asked carefully, what do you think, senior? Do you mean that I should hide it from the two children? Lan Shiwei immediately understood what Musian meant. Ming Musian's proposal was obviously her original plan, but when she heard him say this proposal in person, Lan Shiwei still hesitated. How should I answer this child better? If I agree to him, it means that I will be intimate with him in the future. However, according to Musian's words, this intimacy is pure, without any emotion, just to fill the emptiness of her spiritual consciousness. Pure dual cultivation, this statement will make Lan Shiwei feel better, and she will not feel too guilty because she cheated on her own descendants. After all, she is the ancestor of the Lan clan, and she must consider everything carefully. Lan Shiwei gazed at Musian tenderly and whispered, you should not just want to help me, right? Obviously, Musian was not willing to return empty-handed, and he wanted to know more unknown secrets. For example, what exactly is the second arc used for? For example, what exactly did the sect leader and Lan Shiwei agree on in the first place? Yes, I really don't just want to help you. Musian nodded gently and frankly admitted this fact. There was a bit of timidity in his voice, and he peeked into Lan Shiwei's eyes. In fact, since the last time I saw you, I have had a little admiration for you. The sudden confession made Lan Shiwei stunned for a moment. Soon afterwards, she smiled faintly and said, do you mean, you want to pursue me? Musian nodded gently, but his eyes were full of regret. He said in a low voice, I know that I am not worthy of you, so I never planned to become your Taoist partner from the beginning, I just hope to help you, that's all. Looking at Musian's lost eyes, Lan Shiwei's heartbeat suddenly accelerated for the first time. Musian, he is the husband of King Di and the Taoist partner of Gong Lianyu. In the current Zhu, there are definitely many daughters of ancient noble families who are secretly watching him. But this child actually confessed to her. Lan Shiwei couldn't see any deception in Musian's eyes. The child's words, and even his eyes at this moment, were so sincere. But his eyes kept looking at Lan Shiwei's beautiful legs under her blue skirt. Of course, this is understandable behavior. After all, it is not surprising that a young man of Musian's age would be attracted by the mature and attractive body of an older sister. It must be said that Musian's proposal just now, and even his confession, are very tempting. At least Musian gave himself full marks. But even so, he didn't have much hope. Lan Shiwei is different from the women he met in the past. She is the ancestor of the Lan clan, and she has made some agreements with the clan leader, so she may not leave the second arc. What's more, both senior sister and sister Fei Ying respect her so much, no matter how tempting Tianchen Gluding is, Lan Shiwei may not be able to get over it in her heart. Just as this thought flashed through Musian's mind, he heard Lan Shiwei suddenly say in a leisurely voice, in fact, there is something I have never told you just now. This second arc actually hides a biggest secret. Noticing that Musian's attention was attracted, Lan Shiwei raised her red lips slightly, gently touched her red lips with her fingertips, and deliberately kept it a secret. Do you want to know? When she said the last sentence, she tilted her head slightly, and there seemed to be a hint of teasing in her beautiful eyes. If you say you don't want to know, it's all fake, but anyone with a discerning eye can see that Lan Shiwei is deliberately making people happy at this moment, and may not tell the truth. However, even so, Musian nodded gently. But you won't say it directly, right? Musian stared into Lan Shiwei's eyes and said, what are your conditions? Remember what you said just now. I said a lot just now, what do you mean? Musian thought to himself. Lan Shiwei said softly and calmly, Lianer and Fei Ying are practicing in the cabin not far away, comprehending the scriptures. In the past, they always asked me for advice when they didn't understand something. It's not very convenient to do something in this ancient ship. Musian stopped talking. Although he knew that this was actually a disguised rejection of him, it was still a bit regrettable. This beautiful ancestor is as beautiful as snow, and she exudes a faint chill. I guess even her slender feet are slightly cool to the touch. And most importantly, she is also the ancestor of senior sister and sister Fei Ying. All descendants of the Lan clan can be considered her children. This combination is completely different. Musian sighed softly, in that case, then dash. Before Musian finished speaking, Lan Shiwei stepped on the floor and came to Musian's side. With a slightly cool fragrance, Lan Shiwei reached out and gently hugged the back of Musian's head, gently pressed it, and buried his face in his arms. While Musian was still in a state of unconsciousness, Lan Shiwei gently placed her rosy lips next to the boy's ear, and in her cold and pleasant voice, there was a little moist charm, and she whispered. So wait a minute, remember to be quiet. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 583. The second arc has only 3 floors in total, and each cabin is quite spacious. There are red lanterns hanging in the quiet night, which looks quite strange. At this moment, Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying were studying the remaining scriptures in the cabin on the second floor. The elder sister is wearing a gorgeous moon-white dress, while the younger sister is wearing a fiery red and tight cheongsam, which outlines her sexy and tall figure. Did something happen when I went out and saw that guy? Why did he look so unhappy when he came back? Lan Feiying asked with a smile, her eyes lingering on her sister's cold face. According to what her sister just said, when Lan Mulian left the cabin and planned to ask his ancestors about the contents of the fragments, he happened to meet Musian. Then, after Musian and his sister talked for a while, her sister came back. Although it sounds like there is nothing wrong with this, you must know that my sister was in a good mood when she left not long ago, but when she came back, it was obvious that her mood had deteriorated. The only person who could cause ripples in Lan Mulian's usually calm state of mind was Musian. It's nothing, it's just that my junior brother asked me some questions before entering the cabin, Lan Mulian said calmly. That's what he said, but looking at the unhappy expression as if a little girl was angry, it was obvious that something had happened. Lan Feiying couldn't help showing an ambiguous smile, but she didn't expose it, but changed the topic. So he is also reading fragments of scripture in a certain cabin now. Well, he wants to investigate the destruction of past dynasties. Lan Mulian nodded lightly. Lan Feiying silently glanced at the thin bamboo slip in her sister's hand and the word dynasty faintly visible on it, and couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile. What's wrong, do you have anything to say? Lan Mulian was made uncomfortable by her sister's meaningful gaze, and could not help but frown slightly. Nothing, I'm just thinking that there are many powerful remnant souls in this ancient ship. I wonder if he will accidentally offend a powerful remnant soul. What if he can't live without the ancient ship because of this? Trouble, Lan Feiying said with a smile. Lan Mulian glanced sideways at her sister and said calmly, you want to arouse my worry so that I can go find him now to ensure that he will not be injured in the ancient ship, right? Although he had not been with Lan Feiying for a long time, Lan Mulian still had a rough idea of what this charming sister was thinking. Don't worry, the ancestor is here, he will be fine, she added again. Lan Feiying was surprised and said, the ancestor woke up so quickly. Lan Shiwei's condition is very special, so she often hides in the ancient ship in a sleeping state. Even the two sisters cannot see the beautiful ancestor every time. But according to her sister's wishes, Lan Shiwei was actually escorting Musian? Lan Mulian nodded lightly. Well, the ancestor said in a message before that there is no need to worry about him. The ancestor has made an agreement with someone, so he will take good care of him. Oh. No wonder his sister is so relieved about him now. It turns out that his ancestor is by his side. When Lan Feiying was thinking about this, she suddenly frowned slightly, closed the bamboo slips in her hands, and said, "If I remember correctly, after the enlightenment stage, his natural furnace cauldron has reached the level of ascension stage, right? The shielding spell that the spiritual dragon had placed on him in the past has been eliminated, so the Forbidden Land should be watching him now." Lan Mulian nodded slightly. "No matter what, he is safe in this ancient ship." Lan Fading was not relieved after hearing this, and said softly, "As long as they are women, most of them cannot resist the temptation of the natural furnace. Sister, tell me, ancestor, will she?" Lan Fading was about to speak but stopped. She knew that it was not good to maliciously speculate about her ancestors, but she still couldn't help but have this ridiculous idea in her heart. The ancestors would wake up and even go out of their way to greet Musian. Is it really just because the elders care about the younger ones? Lan Mulian glanced at her sister silently and said, "If our ancestor really has an idea, my junior brother and I have been to this ancient ship more than once in the past. She has every chance to take action." "Sister, have you been to this ancient ship with him before?" Lan Fading asked curiously. Lan Mulian nodded. "Well, he and I were boating on the Blue Lake at that time, and then we bumped into that ancient ship." As she spoke, her face in the darkness was inexplicably stained with a hint of crimson. "If you think about it carefully, your ancestor has always been in this ancient ship, and she was on the ancient ship with Huan and her junior brother without knowing it at that time. Didn't the ancestors completely see those things?" "Sister," Lan Fading called tentatively, her eyes scanning her sister's cold face several times, which was quite meaningful. "It's okay, I just suddenly remembered some trivial matters." Lan Mulian was rarely embarrassed, and her words were a little unnatural. "I didn't expect to see my sister like this in my lifetime." Lan Fading looked at her sister with interest, but did not ask further questions, but changed the topic. "Sister, what are you talking about between us and that guy? Don't you want to make it clear to your ancestors then?" What Lan Fading was referring to was naturally the emotional issue between them and Musian. The ancestors, like the elders of the Blue Clan, had never really liked Musian. To be precise, he didn't like the two sisters being with Musian at the same time. According to the ancestors' previous words, if Musian was only dating one of the two sisters, she would be very relieved. Because Musian's talent is worthy of any of the sisters. But kissing the elder sister and not letting go of the younger sister, Lan Shiwei had expressed displeasure about this before. Lan Murian crossed her left leg over her right leg, dangling the white boots under her skirt, put down the bamboo slips, and said in a very calm tone, "Don't you think the ancestor doesn't know?" From Lan Shiwei's previous performance, it is not difficult to see that the ancestor had long known about the relationship between them and Musian. Lan Fading narrowed her eyes and suddenly said, "The ancestors knew but did not oppose it openly. Does that mean they turned a blind eye? Then I'm afraid the only one who opposes us now is Dad." Lan Fading changed her words and said, "Only Lan Pingzi and several elders of the Lan clan." Lan Murian snorted coldly when she heard this. "What do they think? What does it have to do with us? Perhaps the elders of the Lan clan refused to let Ian's mother enter the gate of the Lan clan with good intentions, but no matter what, the days when they lived with their mother in that small broken house and suffered were facts that could not be changed. Lan Pingzi did abandon his wife and children and returned to the Lan clan alone under the pressure of those elders. Even if he later became the chief of the Lan clan and wanted to take the two sisters back to the Lan clan, it was probably just for peace of mind." Seeing that her sister didn't say anything, Lan Murian suddenly asked softly, "Do you want to go back to the Lan clan?" Lan Fading curled her lips and said lightly, "If those old guys don't apologize, I can't go back." When Lan Murian heard this, she couldn't help but reveal a hint of sarcasm. "It is almost impossible to make those old stubborn people of the Lan clan apologize. I'm afraid that in the eyes of those high-ranking elders of the ancient family, they still don't think they have done anything wrong." At this time, Lan Fading suddenly said faintly, "Sister, If we tell that father that we all like Musian, what do you think his reaction will be? Lan Murian said indifferently, he is just my junior brother. After saying that, she added, he is not unaware, but if you really say it yourself, I think he will still be reluctant to accept it. They have already slept together, but they are still stubborn. Lan Fading smiled and said nothing. If the world is destroyed one day, I think there will still be a mouth left saying, he is just my junior brother. After the two sisters read the fragments of scriptures in the cabin for a while, Lan Fading put down the bamboo slips in her hand and stood up. Are you going to go out? Lan Murian didn't look up. Those fragments of scriptures were obscure and difficult to understand, so the two sisters would occasionally ask their ancestors for advice on questions that were difficult to understand. Lan Shiwei was also very patient and always taught them carefully. Well, it just so happens that I haven't seen that guy for a while, so I'll go and see him by the way. Sister, do you want to stay here and continue reading? Lan Fading asked. Lan Murian nodded reservedly and said, go, I won't disturb you. Not long ago, she ignored her junior brother out of anger. If she goes to see him with Fading now, isn't it too embarrassing? The senior sister, who has always been reserved and cold, has her own pride, so she flatly refused. Then I'll go first, sister. After Lan Fading finished speaking, she put down the bamboo slips in her hand and left the cabin with sexy steps. Meanwhile, in a dark cabin, Lan Shiwei gently hugged the back of Musian's head, allowing his face to be fully buried in her arms. If you look closely, you will find that the cabin seems to be filled with amazing coldness, which is a reaction caused by the Taoist magic that Lan Shiwei practiced in the past. According to her, the higher her emotions are, the more uncontrollably her body will emit such coldness, even freezing the surrounding buildings. Just when Musian was about to act as a licking dog, Lan Shiwei gently reached out and pressed his shoulder, quietly pushed him away, and whispered, someone is approaching here. Is it the senior sisters? Musian's heart trembled. In this ancient ship, in addition to Lan Shiwei, who is now having an affair with Musian without telling anyone, it seems that there are only Lan Mulian and Lan Fading. Who is it? Musian subconsciously lowered his voice and asked. Fading. Lan Shiwei said softly, compared to Lianer, that child is more flexible. Musian could see that his senior sister was a genius homebody who liked to hide in one place and practice in seclusion, and rarely socialized. Lan Fading's personality was the opposite of Lan Murian's. But both Lianer and Fading seemed to have something on their mind. Lan Shiwei continued, I remember when I first met them, their attitude towards me was quite cold. Although they were respectful, I could feel that they always kept their distance from me. It stands to reason that as long as they were descendants of the Lan clan, they would be excited to see her. However, Lan Shiwei vaguely remembered that when the two sisters learned that she was the ancestor of the Lan clan, they were not particularly excited, but just maintained proper etiquette. Musian seemed to think of something when he heard this. When he looked at the cold and beautiful woman in front of him again, he suddenly sighed softly. What's wrong? Why did you sigh suddenly? Lan Shiwei asked in confusion. Musian showed hesitation and said softly, Junior suddenly thought, senior sister and the others have been hurt by the Blue clan in the past, and now they finally trust you. If they know what happened to us today, even if they can understand that I am here to help you heal. But I'm afraid I feel a little sad. Do you regret it? Lan Shiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. Musian shook his head, how could I regret it? It's just that the junior suddenly thought that instead of hiding it all the time, it would be better to reveal the affairs between me and the senior to them bit by bit. That's fine. Lan Shiwei thought for a moment and nodded lightly. Then, she thought of another thing Musian said just now. You just said that they were harmed by the Blue clan in the past. What's going on? She had never heard Lianer and Fei Ying mention these past events. Actually, This junior only knows a little bit about this matter. Musian raised his head and looked at the door of the cabin, with a hint of reminiscence in his eyes. In the past, the head of the Blue Clan abandoned them due to pressure from the elders of the Blue Clan. Later, the mother of senior sister and sister Fei Ying also died. Seriously ill. Just now, you said that they didn't trust you at first. I think it may be because of the psychological trauma left in the Blue Clan. After all, until now, no one from the Blue Clan has apologized to the senior sisters. Musian had an indignant look on his face when he mentioned this matter. Sometimes I feel angry when I think about these things. It is not uncommon for people in Kyushu to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Why do they have to give up their married wives when they come to the Blue Clan? My wife has been abandoned. If she is a junior, even if anyone forces me, I will never abandon my Taoist companion. If this news spreads, even the image of the Blue Clan will be affected. As he was talking, he suddenly realized that he was talking too much and said quickly, "Hey, I'm sorry, senior, I didn't mean to say bad things about the Blue Clan." He looked a little flustered and at a loss, looking like a simple boy next door. Lan Shiwei looked at him quietly. "What you said is the truth, and it's not a bad thing. The 2 descendants he has always doted on are not even sure whether they will become members of the Blue Clan. After he left the Blue Clan, how did those descendants manage the Blue Clan?" Lan Shiwei's usually calm eyes couldn't help but look a little more sulky. Musian lowered his head slightly and whispered, "After all, this is an internal matter of the Blue Clan. It is really inappropriate for an outsider, a junior, to intervene." "An outsider?" Lan Shiwei looked at the boy who was hugging her slender waist affectionately and his shy expression at the moment, and couldn't help but smile, with a bit of tenderness in his eyes. "To me, you are no longer an outsider. You are Fei Ying and Lianer's Taoist companion, so you are also half of my Blue Clan." This sentence comes from the mouth of the ancestor of the Blue Clan. She has already acknowledged Musian's identity in the Blue Clan. Musian was moved and said, "Senior is so kind." Then, he quickly thought of something and hurriedly added, "By the way, Senior, the elders of the Blue Clan I have contacted must have had other reasons for doing that. They are all very nice people. Although they made things difficult for me at the beginning, they were just trying to protect my own shortcomings. I don't want senior sister and sister Fei Ying to have anything to do with me. You must not be angry. It will be bad if it disturbs the Taoist mind. Too eager to protect shortcomings." Lan Shiwei sneered in his heart. Will those 2 beauties of heaven be driven out of the Blue Clan out of their eagerness to protect their shortcomings, and even now they have not officially returned to the Blue Clan? Lan Shiwei gently stroked Musian's handsome face and said quietly, "You are good at everything, but you are just too kind. The so-called other reasons are nothing more than internal struggles for power within the clan. Musian is too kind-hearted to understand this. But that doesn't mean she doesn't understand either. It seems that I have been here for too long, and some people have forgotten about me," Lan Shiwei suddenly said softly, his eyes a little deeper. "Senior, are you planning to leave the second arc?" Musian raised his head and asked. "Well, let's go out and relax for a while." Lan Shiwei said quietly, "It's just a good opportunity to take advantage of this opportunity to clean up the dirty things inside." Musian was about to say something more, but at this moment, Lan Shiwei raised his fingertips and gently touched Musian's lips. Shhh. Boom boom. At this time, there was a knock on the door outside the cabin. "Ancestor, can I come in?" It was Lan Feiying's voice. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 584. Ancestor. Lan Feiying called out softly but got no response, so she called out again. Lan Shiwei's red lips couldn't help but curl up a faint arc, and responded in a gentle tone, "Just tell me if you have anything to say." "Is it about the contents of those fragments?" Lan Shiwei said casually, and then glanced at the silent boy beside him. Her eyes were as charming as silk. Under Musian's surprised eyes, she gently placed her right hand under her body, and her slender green jade fingers hooked the ice blue skirt. Noticing the boy's straight gaze, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but slightly raised, and then her fingertips rested on the skirt and hooked it slightly. In the dim light, a pair of plump and slender legs were vaguely revealed, white and attractive. "Ancestor, are you really going to play so big?" Musian almost couldn't hold back and directly suppressed him. "Are you not convenient now?" Lan Feiying's hesitant voice came from outside the house. Sister Feiying is suspicious. Musian's heart skipped a beat, but Lan Shiwei's expression remained calm, saying, "Musian encountered some problems when he was reading the fragments of the scriptures, and I am still explaining them to him." At the end, the woman looked at him with a slightly playful look. "Is he still here?" Lan Feiying asked doubtfully. Under Lan Shiwei's playful gaze, Musian forced himself to remain calm and shouted, "Sister Feiying, long time no see." Hearing the helpless look on the boy's face when he spoke, Lan Shiwei's mouth corners could not help but slightly raised a very beautiful arc, and her eyes were full of joy. Of course, she couldn't want her descendants to know what was happening in the house now. She just wanted to tease this big boy a little. Lan Shiwei was sure that Feiying would not open the door directly to come in. After all, they were all very polite and good children. Musian was talking to Lan Feiying while looking at the ancestor of the Lan clan in front of him. At this moment, the woman's eyes were full of teasing smiles. Rather than enjoying the pleasure of cheating, it was more like teasing him. "That's enough. You don't want to be discovered, do you?" Musian reminded him in a voice transmission. Lan Shiwei had a faint smile in her beautiful eyes, and she also transmitted a message: "Feiying is a very well-behaved child, and she won't do anything to disobey me, so you don't have to worry, as long as you don't panic. But if you seduce me like this now, I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself later." Musian looked at the cold and beautiful woman who was almost close to his body, and finally transmitted a message to her: "So please restrain yourself." "What will happen if you don't restrain yourself?" Lan Shiwei pondered Musian's words, looked at him carefully for a few times, and then looked at him with a smile like an elder caring for the younger generation, saying, "Are you going to punish me?" Musian suddenly pressed Lan Shiwei's wrist, and pressed her shoulder with his other hand, just so that her back was pressed against the door. Fortunately, Lan Shiwei reacted very quickly and used her spiritual energy to wrap her body, which avoided making too much noise. However, before she could ask, Musian suddenly took a half step forward. Under Lan Shiwei's panicked eyes, the child who was supposed to be teased actually pressed his lips on Lan Shiwei's red lips. Hot and gentle, there was also an unspeakable taboo, and excitement. This guy was so bold. Lan Shiwei's back was pressed against the door, and she could even clearly feel the breath of Feiying, who was almost close to her. There was a sense of shame of being intimate with a boy in front of her descendants. And an indescribable excitement. Lan Shiwei's calm state of mind changed for the first time. In fact, for the ancestors of the Lan clan, her feelings for Musian were at most the care of the elders for the younger generation. She took the initiative to ask Musian just now, just to experience the spiritual energy of the natural furnace and use the natural furnace to reunite her body. However, with Musian's action, Lan Shiwei felt a strange feeling in her heart. It was a kind of guilt, and after the guilt, there was an indescribable excitement. She was suppressed by a child who was many years younger than her. Moreover, one of her most beloved descendants was now outside the door. The warm breath on Musian's body, the aura of the natural furnace, and even the Dao rhyme of the heavenly Dao, the new heavenly Dao, and even the Dao of the great Dao, can all be clearly felt at this moment. This child is the husband of the Green Emperor and the Taoist partner of her two descendants. However, Musian is now completely addicted to her charm and greedily asks for her. If Lan Shiwei opened her mouth to Musian just for the sake of trading and condensing her body, then at this moment, she felt a little more inexplicable joy in her heart. That seems to be the real destination of all the female emperors who have achieved the Dao. Feeling excited about n.t.ring someone else's Taoist partner, or even intoxicated by the joy of it. At this moment, the ancestor of the Lan clan seemed to have faintly touched the threshold of the new Dao realm. "Ancestor, what's wrong with you?" Lan Feiying's puzzled voice suddenly sounded, because she suddenly felt that there was no movement in the house. Lan Shiwei glanced at the young man in front of her, and after releasing her red lips, she gently exhaled a sweet breath, with a trembling voice, "Nothing, it's just that Mu Xiao probably consulted too many fragments of scriptures in the past few days, and his mental consumption was too great, so he fell asleep now." She glanced at the hand on her slender waist and gently slapped it away. "You go back first, don't wake him up now." After this, he. The voice suddenly stagnated. Lan Shiwei glanced at Musian with seductive eyes, and then slowly put her red lips close to his lips, and whispered, "When he wakes up, I will let him find you." She quietly kissed Musian's lips with her slightly cool red lips. In the quiet cabin. This can almost be said to be a secret room, and from time to time, there are fragments of scriptures, jade slips and other things left over from the ancient times of great powers floating through the void. In addition, there is nothing in the cabin, only some scattered clothes. Lan Shiwei licked her red lips, looked at Musian who was leaning against the table, thinking about life, and blinked her bright eyes. "I heard that men will reflect on themselves after the end, are you regretting it now?" As she spoke, she gently tied the corset on her blue dress, outlining her graceful figure, and tidied her slightly lazy messy hair. Musian looked at the woman who walked to his side and knelt down, and suddenly said, "I just suddenly thought, Senior chose me because he liked my natural furnace, right? If you condense your body later, will we still maintain the relationship we have now?" Lan Shiwei stretched out his hand to press Musian's head, so that he could lie on his beautiful legs, and thought carefully for a moment, "I have no so-called lover in my life, nor do I have a favorite person. My feelings for you are actually more like the care of elders for younger generations like Lianer and Feiying." Although he had expected that this woman might answer like this, Musian still felt a little regretful when she really said so. "In the past, I thought that if someone couldn't suppress me, how could he be worthy of being my Taoist partner?" Lan Shiwei gently stroked Musian's face with his fingertips, and said faintly, "But you did suppress me just now. Although it wasn't based on strength." This sentence seemed quite meaningful. "But you can barely suppress me in the state of enlightenment now. If you wait until you achieve the state of integration in the future Lan Shiwei leaned close to his ear and said in a soft and sweet voice, "You can do whatever you want at that time." Hearing Lan Shiwei's words lingering in his ears, Musian couldn't help but fall into deep thought and emotion. It has to be said that the few powerful people in the state of integration he knew were much more open than he thought. As the ancestor of the Lan clan, he could take risks to play interesting games with you in the cabin before. It's really exciting to think about it. At this time, Lan Shiwei quietly stood up and said, thinking carefully, "It seems that I haven't left the second arc for thousands of years. You can go out with me to relax. It just so happens that I have something to do, and I want to talk to the current head of the Lan clan." This is also one of the few compensations she can make for the two children. No. Rather than compensation, it is better to say that it is for peace of mind. She is the ancestor of the Lan clan, and can also be said to be half-master of Lan Murian and Lan Feiying. However, she did that kind of thing with the Taoist partner of the two children in this dim cabin before. With her strength, it is completely easy to refuse Musian, but not only did she not do so, but she deliberately seduced him. Such guilt can only be compensated by doing something for them. Although even if Lan Murian and Lan Fading knew about her and Musian, they probably wouldn't say anything. But Lan Shiwei still felt guilty in her heart. "Do you regret it?" Musian suddenly asked. Lan Shiwei shook her head gently. "I'm just thinking about something. By the way, if you can convince Lianer and Fading." She stepped on high-heeled sandals with ice crystals, leaned over his ear, and whispered softly, "Sister, don't you mind serving them together?" Until Musian left the ancient ship, Lan Shiwei's previous words were still echoing in his mind. She finally said that she didn't mind being with her senior sister, so as long as her senior sister and Fading agreed, could they have a big silver party. Lan Shiwei's spiritual consciousness is now in the natural furnace. Why not just ask her again to confirm? "Brother Mu, when did you come to Xianhuang Mountain?" At this time, a surprised voice suddenly came from behind, and also temporarily brought Musian back to reality from his previous thoughts. He turned his head and saw that it was the young master of the Lan clan, Lan Wu, who appeared in front of him. "Brother-in-law, why are you here?" Musian was surprised at first, then greeted him with a smile. Lan Wu's forehead was covered with black lines, and he said, "It's okay for you to say this in front of me, but don't say it in front of my father. The Lan tribe's ancestral land is patrolled by tribe members every day, and it's my turn today," Lan Wu added. Musian looked thoughtful and asked, "How has our father been doing recently?" Knowing that Musian was teasing him on purpose, Lan Wu was too lazy to persuade him to change his words and said, "Not long ago, he had sent the spirit tablet to the Lan clan, which was considered to be her last wish before her death, but recently my father and several elders have quarreled several times." The spirit tablet that Lan Wu was talking about was naturally the spirit tablet of Lan Murian and Lan Fading's biological mother. Musian thought about it and smiled. Is it because senior sister and sister Fading have not become members of the Lan clan yet? Lan Wu nodded gently. The childhood experience has always been a thorn in the hearts of Lan Murian and Lan Fading. Even though their mother finally fulfilled her last wish and the spirit tablet successfully entered the Lan clan, the two sisters still have some psychological knots about becoming members of the Lan clan. After all, the tribesmen who forced Lan Pingzi to abandon his wife and children have not yet admitted their mistakes. The two sisters are so stubborn, and the elders did not apologize at the time, so it is naturally even more impossible for them to return to the Lan clan. The recent dispute between Lan Pingzi and several elders was also caused by this. Lan Wu sighed helplessly. "Those elders are all heroes of my Lan clan. In terms of seniority, they are even much higher than my father. Their status in the clan is difficult to shake. It is almost impossible for them to admit their mistakes or even apologize to my two sisters in front of the clan members." Musian smiled and said, "To put it bluntly, they know that their actions were wrong at the beginning, but they are unwilling to admit it. Are they taking advantage of their seniority?" Lan Wu couldn't help but glance at Musian. Only Musian dared to say this. If it were the members of the Lan clan, they would not dare to comment on those living fossils in this way. He moved closer and whispered, "Are you here to see my two sisters? What is their current situation in the ancestral land?" Now everyone in the Lan clan knows that his two sisters seem to have been blessed by the ancestors in the dark, and even received a lot of her inheritance, which makes some old monsters who used to sleep in the Lan clan unable to sit still. The inheritance of the ancestors of the Lan clan can be said to be a recognition of blood for the clan members. But the ancestors of the Blue clan chose the blood of the two side branches as the true inheritors. How can people sit still? If you want to know, why don't you just ask them yourself, Musian said. Lan Wu said helplessly, "If I can, I would like to, but you know how bad the relationship between my two sisters and the Blue clan is. Except for you, I'm afraid no one else can get close to them." Musian thought about it and smiled. "As long as your father and the elders of the clan are willing to bow their heads, I think the sisters may forgive them." It's impossible to make those stinky stones bow their heads. Now, except for the first generation elders, there is no one else in the Blue Clan who can suppress them in terms of seniority. Lan Wu shook his head slightly, and was about to say something else, but at this time, he heard an old and low voice. This must be fellow deist Mu. Lan Wu's face changed slightly, and he transmitted his voice, "Be careful, he is one of the branches of the Blue Clan who supported my father to rebuild his family. He can also be said to be the shadow of the Blue Clan. Everything he does is for the future of the Blue Clan, and he can do whatever it takes to achieve this." Muzian looked up following the voice, but found that at some point, several figures appeared on Xianhuang Mountain. Some of them looked very familiar to him. He had seen them before at the ancestral worship ceremony. His future father-in-law was also among them. It seems that they found that I left Xianhuang Mountain, so they came to see the situation, Muzian understood. Now, in addition to him, only the Blue Clan sisters can enter the deepest part of the ancestral land of the Blue Clan, but the Lan Murian sisters knew that they would not pay attention to them, so they could only pin their hopes on Muzian. Muzian nodded politely. Now he is not weaker than these elders in terms of realm, so naturally he does not need to call them junior as he did before. Lan Pingzi floated down from mid-air, looking at Muzian gently, and said, "Fellow deist Mu, it seems that the Green Emperor did not come with you to Xianhuang Mountain this time." Muzian smiled and said, "Yao Meng sent me to the ancestral land. She is still meditating in the ancestral land." It was almost visibly seen that the eyelids of several elders were twitching slightly, and their hearts were slightly startled. Lan Pingzi nodded slightly, and then after a few simple chats, he finally got to the point of this time. "I wonder if fellow deist Mu has seen my two daughters when he entered my Lan clan's ancestral land this time." "I have seen them," Muzian said. Hearing this, several elders, including the first generation elders, looked at Muzian. Lan Pingzi then asked, "How much inheritance have my two daughters received from the ancestors?" Muzian shook his head gently, "I'm not sure about this. If you want to know, you can ask them after they come out." Lan Pingzi heard this, but smiled helplessly. "Fellow deist Mu knows that my two daughters are quite cold to me. Even after joining the Blue Clan recently, they have never greeted me." Muzian laughed and said, "Don't you know why they didn't greet me? When my senior sister and the others were suffering outside, the Blue Clan didn't care, and no one knew until your wife died of a serious illness. Until now, no one has taken responsibility for what happened back then, and no one has apologized. Are you waiting for them to take the initiative to bow their heads and join the Blue Clan? Excuse me, if it were me, I would probably hang up and beat those elders who advised you to abandon your wife and marry a new lover to vent my hatred." Muzian's words were merciless. Almost the moment the words fell, several elders' faces turned black. "Muzian, this is my Lan clan's family affair, and it is not your turn as an outsider to point fingers here." An old woman glared at him, with a bit of anger in her words. Muzian shrugged. "Anyway, if I were the clan leader, I would definitely not throw such a talented girl out and ignore her, and even let them have no good feelings towards the Lan clan now." Another old man couldn't help it, frowning. He was one of the shadows mentioned by Lan Wu just now, and an important cornerstone of the Lan clan. Obviously, Muzian's words touched the sore spots of several elders present. If they had known that Lan Murian and Lan Feiying had such talents, they would never have left them outside. "Muzian, we are polite to you because you are the Taoist partner of the Green Emperor, but this is the family affair of my Lan clan, and this is the place where the souls of our ancestors sleep. It is not your turn as an outsider to make trouble here," an old man said coldly. "I just said some of my true thoughts. If it were me, I would now take revenge on those who pressured me and forced me to abandon my wife and children, and suppress them in the ancestral land for 3,000 years." Muzian smiled faintly. "Oh, although I can't do such a thing as abandoning my wife and children," he added again. "Is he crazy? When Lan Wu heard this, he looked at Musian in disbelief. His first reaction was whether this guy was crazy. Even if Musian was backed by the Green Emperor, it was not a rational thing to mock several clan elders and even his father. An elder from the Lan clan branch laughed out of anger and said coldly, "Suppressed for 3,000 years? In terms of qualifications, not to mention you, even Lan Pingzi doesn't have the qualifications." Lan Pingzi frowned slightly and was about to speak. However, at this moment, a calm and emotionless voice sounded quietly in the ancestral land. "He doesn't have the qualifications, what about me? Unconsciously, it's a new week again, please give me a wave of monthly tickets and blades." So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 585. Almost at the moment when this voice sounded from Musian's body, there was silence outside the immortal Emperor Mountain. Soon after, an old man beside Lan Pingzi suddenly paused. After a few seconds, he reacted and said coldly, "Who is your excellency? This is the ancestral land of the Lan tribe. How dare you come here to disturb us, the ancestors' long sleep?" Not only this old man, but also several elders from the Blue clan, including Lan Pingzi, showed a bit of sullenness on their faces. Whether it is the Lan clan or other ancient families, for them, the ancestral land is undoubtedly the most sacred place, because there sleep the dead souls of their elders and even their ancestors. Earlier, Emperor Qing brought Musian into the ancestral land. It was because Musian, like sisters Lan Mulian, had not been rejected by the ancestral land, so they did not stop him. However, now a strange woman unexpectedly appeared again, and she unscrupulously disturbed the ancestors' sleep in the ancestral land. This is undoubtedly a provocation. Everyone, calm down first. I'll wait until I see who it is. The elder of the Shadow clan said indifferently, "If you dare to enter my ancestral land alone, you must have someone to rely on. Perhaps, this is also a powerful person." None of the people present seemed to realize that since the time the woman spoke, the powerful first-generation elder of the Blue clan had not spoken a word. His cloudy eyes flickered a few times. His expression was a little dazed and seemed a little unbelievable. Seeing that several elders in the clan were so frightened and angry, Lan Wu was slightly frightened in his heart, and said through a message, "Brother Mu, you have really gone too far this time. You first leave the ancestral land as soon as possible, and I will tell you the story for you." Father intercedes. His voice was suddenly interrupted by a voiceless exclamation. The Shadow clan elder who just used his spiritual sense to scan Musian's natural cauldron subconsciously took half a step back and stared at his body, his eyes full of astonishment and even shock. Lan Wu looked at the clan elder in shock and uncertainty, not knowing what was going on. At this time, Lan Pingzi on the side also used his spiritual sense to scan Musian's natural cauldron with surprise in his eyes. "Ancestor." Just when his spiritual consciousness swept over the rude person who disturbed his ancestor's sleep, Lan Pingzi seemed to notice something, his eyes suddenly froze, and he squeezed out two words through his teeth. "Ancestor?" Lan Wu, and even the old men who had looked at him with evil eyes just now, changed their expressions. They stared at Musian's body, as if they wanted to see through him. At this time, an icy blue halo floated out of Musian's body, followed by an astonishing coldness that gradually overflowed from his body. Then, in the pervasive cold air, a figure wearing an ice crystal dress appeared quietly in everyone's sight. Her dress was like a veil, and in the cold wind, there seemed to be a faint mark like an ice flower on her white jade feet. Those eyes were cold and emotionless, looking down at the people below indifferently. "Why, ancestor, haven't you already?" Lan Pingzi looked at the woman in a daze, and was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. "What has happened?" "Already completely dead, even the spiritual consciousness has disappeared between heaven and earth." Lan Shiwei said expressionlessly, "It would be fine if he was really dead, but it just happened that his spiritual consciousness was sleeping in the ancestral land. After waking up 1,000 years ago, I watched you go to the nine-tailed sky of the demon clan every few years. Fox sacrifice, the largest ancient family in the East continent makes sacrifices to the demon emperor of the demon realm. This scene is really interesting. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of all the elders including the first generation elders changed. Ancestor. The first generation elder couldn't control his excited heartbeat. He stepped forward slowly, raised his head and said, "You are really alive, you are actually still alive." Among the people present, there were only 2 living fossils who had met Lan Shiwei several times when they were young, and one of them was the first elder of the Blue tribe. The first generation elders said this, which means that she is really the ancestor of the Blue clan. Seeing the always steady first generation elders showing such excitement, in the lightning flash, several clan elders present were filled with joy. You then became heavier again. I am happy because the emergence of Lan Shiwei means that the status of the Lan clan will gradually rise in the future, even not lower than that of the Yaokai Holy Land. And the heavy thing is that after Lan Shiwei returns to the Lan clan, the first thing he will probably do is to settle things. I don't intend to pursue the matter of that stupid fox. However, what is surprising is that Lan Shiwei did not get too concerned about the nine-tailed fox and said in a calm tone. There seemed to be countless ice flowers scattered behind her, which were naturally strange and magnificent, making the woman's figure even more awe-inspiring. However, when all the clan elders were breathing a sigh of relief, Lan Shiwei's tone suddenly became much colder. But sisters Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying have now received all my inheritance, and their talents are all. If you are not under me, there will be 2 great powers in the future. But I heard later that they are not even considered members of the Blue clan. Hearing this, one of the clan elders boldly raised his head and looked at his ancestor, saying, "Ancestor, you don't know something. In the past, the 2 sisters did not grow up in the Blue clan, and their blood was not pure, so they may have the Blue clan doesn't have a sense of belonging, so." Before he finished speaking, the clan elder suddenly realized that something was wrong. The entire space in Immortal Emperor Mountain seemed to be frozen by some invisible force, and the cold air was biting. Several people present had goosebumps uncontrollably and their adrenaline was racing. If any of these people were to go out alone, they would be able to intimidate a party. However, at this moment, they felt that every nerve in their bodies was sending out signals of danger and fear, and they lowered their heads one after another. Only Musian Zen glanced into the air from time to time. This sense of pressure stemmed from the suppression of the Lan clan's bloodline and the suppression of Lan Shiwei's own realm. But Musian was not among those suppressed. Lan Shiwei looked at the clan elder who had spoken before with cold eyes. "Are you trying to tell me that the important bloodline of the Blue clan in the future is more important than the purity or impurity of the so-called bloodline in your mouth?" "I don't dare," the elder said in a low voice. Lan Shiwei snorted coldly. "All ancient aristocratic families will inevitably become corrupted after experiencing the erosion of time. I do not intend to pursue the matter of worshipping the nine-tailed sky fox. I have also turned a blind eye to the struggle for power in the past, but that is because the core interests of the Blue clan are not involved. But if someone involves the future interests of the Blue clan in order to fight for power." Although they did not continue talking, several clan elders present were shocked in their hearts. "I probably know everything about the past affairs of sisters Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying." Lan Shiwei looked past several clan elders and landed on the leader of the Blue clan. "If you want these 2 sisters to return to the Blue clan, you should know what to do, right?" Lan Pingzi hesitated slightly, then nodded heavily. Lan Shiwei looked around the crowd and said calmly, "Those who forced Lan Pingzi to abandon his wife and children in order to fight for power and gain will be imprisoned for 3,000 years from now on." As soon as Lan Shiwei finished speaking, the expressions of several old men in the crowd changed. 3,000 years of confinement, even for these clan elders, this is already an extremely severe punishment. But Lan Pingzi knew very well that this punishment was actually just right. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. Over the years, several influential elders in the Blue Clan have been fighting for power to seek benefits for their own branch. Although he is the leader of the Blue Clan, he cannot do whatever he wants. Among the people present, the only one who could suppress the clan elders was the ancestor of the Blue Clan. Lan Shiwei glanced at Lan Pingzi and said calmly, "The matter between you and your daughter is a family matter, so I won't interfere. But you didn't take care of them in the past. Now that they have someone they like, it will be the same if you interfere again. Not appropriate." Lan Pingzi glanced at Musian subconsciously, frowned slightly, and hesitated to speak. Lan Shiwei continued, "From now on, you will assist Lan Wu and let him succeed as the leader of the Lan clan." Lan Pingzi was startled, then raised his hands and bowed, which was regarded as acquiescence. Lan Wu also raised his hands and bowed, "Thank you, ancestor." Lan Shiwei ignored everyone and focused his attention on Musian. "Musian, come with me. I have something else to ask you." The tone was indifferent, but also revealed a bit of inhuman coldness. For a time, the faces of the clan elders, including those who were about to be imprisoned, looked a little better. Although she doesn't know how the ancestor was reborn, from the looks of it, she is planning to straighten out the entire Blue Clan, and also establish prestige for the Blue Clan. Lan Wu subconsciously glanced at Musian and wanted to plead, but was secretly held back by Lan Pingzi, who had excellent eyesight. At this time, the ancestor was angry, and it would not be a good thing to get into trouble again. Lan Pingzi originally thought that the position of clan leader would have to be rescreened after this time, and that their lineage would never have the chance to become the head of the Lan clan in the future. But unexpectedly, the ancestors actually gave them a chance. Although he will no longer be the head of the family from now on, at least Lan Wu is also his child. The ancestor would choose Lan Wu, which means that she still recognizes Lan Wu's talent. At this time, we can no longer offend our ancestors. Lan Wu obviously understood this truth, so he gave Musian a look that was asking for blessings, and then withdrew his gaze. With Emperor Qing here, no matter what happens, the ancestors will never really do anything to him. Thinking about it this way, Lan Wu felt a little more relieved about his future brother-in-law. From the beginning to the end, no one present dared to raise their head and look at this condescending ancestor of the Blue Clan. Therefore, naturally none of them noticed that when Lan Shiwei said these words in an indifferent tone, he licked his red lips inadvertently, glanced at Musian seductively with his beautiful eyes, and said something with his mouth. Musian read it through the shape of her mouth and felt the energy and blood in her body surge up instantly. If I read it correctly, she should be talking about me. After following Lan Shiwei all the way out of the Lan tribe's ancestral land, the two walk side by the Teishu Lake of the Blue tribe. Musian consciously fell half a body behind. "Are you satisfied with this?" Lan Shiwei suddenly asked casually. His voice was sweet, with a coldness that seemed to be inhumane. If he hadn't just witnessed the last two words the woman said to him, Musian might have thought like the elders of the Blue Clan that this beautiful ancestor was angry right now. But now, he. Musian quietly took Lan Shiwei's cold jade hand, with a puzzled look on his face. "Senior, what are you talking about? Do you need me to make it clearer? Don't you hope that I can make the decision for them and give them justice?" Lan Shiwei's cold face showed no expression, and she just glanced back at her side inadvertently. The young man glanced at him. She actually knew. Could it be that my acting skills were too poor not long ago? Musian was a little surprised and thought to himself. Musian said calmly, "I really hope you can come forward for them. Both senior sister and sister Feiying suffered a lot in the past, and this matter can be said to be their only worry now, Solve this matter after that. Firstly, they will always remember your kindness, and secondly, their practice will be smooth sailing from now on. Lan Shiwei looked at the calm Taishu Lake ahead and said, "You are right. In fact, I had wanted to come forward on this matter before, but at that time, my spiritual consciousness could not support myself from leaving the second arc for too long. It doesn't matter whether they will choose to return to the Blue Clan in the future. I just hope that if they know what happened between you and me in the future, they won't blame me." When he said this, the ancestor of the Blue Clan sighed quietly. Stealing a man from one's own offspring, what on earth is this? Musian glanced at Lan Shiwei's cold and elegant profile, and suddenly asked, "Why do you let Lan Wu be the future head of the Lan clan? Logically speaking, Lan Pingzi's lifespan should be very long. The head of the family for a while, right? Lan Pingzi's character is too soft. He is more suitable for doing things, rather than being a family leader who coordinates the overall situation," Lan Shiwei said lightly. With her eyes, it is not difficult to see through a person. From the previous conversation with Lan Pingzi, plus the things Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying occasionally mentioned about Lan Pingzi in the past, it is not difficult to see what this man's character is like. "Or do you have a more suitable choice for the head of the family?" Lan Shiwei suddenly asked. Musian immediately shook his head. "This is a matter within your clan. It is inappropriate for me, this junior, to say anything. Aren't you also a member of the Blue Clan?" Lan Shiwei's cold tone suddenly had a hint of laziness, and she looked back and smiled. Two very important beauties of heaven in the future of my Lan clan, and now even I am yours." She let go of Musian's hand, and gently stroked her cool fingertips along Musian's face, from his chin to his neck. Finally, her fingertips gently drew circles on his chest, and raised his head slightly. With a joking look, she lightly opened her red lips. "Do you really need to be so polite?" There was a bit of refreshing coolness in the sweet fragrance, coupled with the soft and delicate body quietly pressing on his chest, all of which aroused Musian's nerves. If it weren't for the fact that this was a very important sacred place for the Blue Tribe, and there might be tribesmen passing by, Musian almost couldn't control his impulse. "I just appeared in the ancestral land today. I'm afraid the clan members have already gathered in the ancestral hall to discuss today's affairs. So there won't be anyone else around here in a short period of time." Lan Shiwei saw that the young man in front of her was slightly moved, and knew that he was also a little moved in his heart. He chuckled, and moved closer again. Her cool red lips were almost completely attached to his ear, and she whispered like a whisper, "Just now the people of the Blue Clan, are really sorry for treating you so much, so let me, as the ancestor of the Blue Clan, make it up to you, little friend." She gently pulled Musian's palm and placed it on her face, with a moist and emotional luster in her beautiful eyes. "You're welcome, you can do whatever you want."